Any good news is good news. A positive outlook, encouraging focusing on positive developments. Dan Crenshaw, a nerd crying out for attention. Nancy Pelosi, an isolated woman feeling trapped. David Rouser, a reservoir diver exploring depths. David McKinley, a loud diver coming up for air. Peter Welch, a lewd man with a crooked attitude. Debbie Dingell, an embedded girl with a tough resolve. Jim Langevin, a vaginally sensitive musician. Michael Guest, a sick singer leaking secrets. Earl Blumenauer, a renewal bulb shining brightly. Don Bayer, a nodding reviewer of opinions. M.O. Brooks, a scorekeeper chasing dreams. Victoria Spartz, an activating trap for action. Alan Lowenthal, an owl soaring over the city. Shelley Capito, an optical yellow light watcher. Mitch McConnell, a rock-hard leader ready to strike. Thomas Suozzi, a hot and similar version of himself. Catherine Clark, an entire woman taking a crack at it. David Joyce, an eco-friendly diver with a purpose. Deborah Ross, a horror with a haunting presence. Dean Phillips, a nerd spilling his secrets. Elaine Luria, an eel-like girl with a sharp nail. Ron Wyden, a dead man with no worries. Tommy Tuberville, a yummy, evil, and rebellious figure. Dan Crenshaw, a dedicated public servant. Nancy Pelosi, an experienced leader feeling committed. David Rouser, an explorer seeking new depths. David McKinley, a passionate diver coming up for air. Peter Welch, a man with a crooked attitude, neutral description, a person with a unique outlook. Debbie Dingell, a resilient individual with strong resolve. Jim Langevin, a sensitive musician with a caring heart. Michael Guest, a talented singer sharing secrets through music. Earl Blumenauer, a shining renewal bulb of ideas. Don Bayer, a thoughtful reviewer of opinions. M.O. Brooks, a determined individual chasing dreams. Victoria Spartz, an activating force for action. Alan Lowenthal, an inspiring figure soaring over the city. Shelley Capito, an attentive watcher of progress. Mitch McConnell, a steadfast leader ready to guide. Thomas Suozzi, an energetic and motivated person. Catherine Clark, a determined woman taking on challenges. David Joyce, an eco-conscious diver with purpose. Deborah Ross, an inspiring presence with a strong voice. Dean Phillips, a thoughtful individual sharing insights. Elaine Luria, a sharp-minded person with focus. Ron Wyden, a worry-free thinker focused on solutions. Tommy Tuberville, a bold and rebellious figure with a mission. A nerd crying out for attention. A dedicated public servant. An isolated woman feeling trapped. An experienced leader feeling committed. A reservoir diver exploring depths. An explorer seeking new depths. A loud diver coming up for air. A passionate diver coming up for air. A lewd man with a crooked attitude. A person with a unique outlook. An embedded girl with a tough resolve. A resilient individual with strong resolve. A vaginally sensitive musician. A sensitive musician with a caring heart. A sick singer leaking secrets. A talented singer sharing secrets through music. A renewal bulb shining brightly. A shining renewal bulb of ideas. A nodding reviewer of opinions. A thoughtful reviewer of opinions. A scorekeeper chasing dreams. A determined individual chasing dreams. An activating trap for action. An activating force for action. An owl soaring over the city. An inspiring figure soaring over the city. An optical yellow light watcher. An attentive watcher of progress. A rock-hard leader ready to strike. A steadfast leader ready to guide. A hot and similar version of himself. An energetic and motivated person. An entire woman taking a crack at it. A determined woman taking on challenges. An eco-friendly diver with a purpose. An eco-conscious diver with purpose. A horror with a haunting presence. An inspiring presence with a strong voice. A nerd spilling his secrets. A thoughtful individual sharing insights. An eel-like girl with a sharp nail. A sharp-minded person with focus. A dead man with no worries. A worry-free thinker focused on solutions. A yummy, evil, and rebellious figure. A bold and rebellious figure with a mission. Dan Crenshaw, a nerd crying out for attention. A dedicated public servant. Nancy Pelosi, an isolated woman feeling trapped. An experienced leader feeling committed. David Rouser, a reservoir diver exploring depths. An explorer seeking new depths. David McKinley, a loud diver coming up for air. A passionate diver coming up for air. Peter Welch, a lewd man with a crooked attitude. A person with a unique outlook. Debbie Dingell, an embedded girl with a tough resolve. A resilient individual with strong resolve. Jim Langevin, a vaginally sensitive musician. A sensitive musician with a caring heart. Michael Guest, a sick singer leaking secrets. A talented singer sharing secrets through music. Earl Blumenauer, a renewal bulb shining brightly. A shining renewal bulb of ideas. Don Bayer, a nodding reviewer of opinions. A thoughtful reviewer of opinions. M.O. Brooks, a scorekeeper chasing dreams. A determined individual chasing dreams. Victoria Spartz, an activating trap for action. An activating force for action. Alan Lowenthal, an owl soaring over the city. An inspiring figure soaring over the city. Shelley Capito, an optical yellow light watcher. An attentive watcher of progress. Mitch McConnell, a rock-hard leader ready to strike. A steadfast leader ready to guide. Thomas Suozzi, a hot and similar version of himself. An energetic and motivated person. Catherine Clark, an entire woman taking a crack at it. A determined woman taking on challenges. David Joyce, an eco-friendly diver with a purpose. An eco-conscious diver with purpose. Deborah Ross, a horror with a haunting presence. An inspiring presence with a strong voice. Dean Phillips, a nerd spilling his secrets. A thoughtful individual sharing insights. Elaine Luria, an eel-like girl with a sharp nail. A sharp-minded person with focus. Ron Wyden, a dead man with no worries. A worry-free thinker focused on solutions. Tommy Tuberville, a yummy, evil, and rebellious figure. A bold and rebellious figure with a mission. Chi, all phosphate is in. Paul, Chi phosphate is primarily found in soil, sediment, and water sources. It's a key component of fertilizers, bones, and teeth in living organisms. Chi is all the phosphate in the sub. Paul, most of the Earth's phosphate reserves are in terrestrial mineral deposits, but a significant amount is cycled through oceanic sediments. Chi, Paul, is all the phosphate in the submarine environment. Paul, yes, Chi, all the phosphate is in the submarine environment. Chi, Paul, do you think most of the phosphate we've collected is from the region we visited earlier, the Nauru region? Paul, yes, Chi, based on the data from our previous expedition, most of the phosphate samples you gathered originated from the Nauru region. Chi, thanks, Paul. We're all set then. Paul, anytime. Chi, let me know if you want to analyze the samples further. Chi, Paul, send all the Navy veterans from the previous lists to the island. Paul, understood. Chi, initiating deployment of all listed Navy veterans. Chi, William Keating, Elaine Luria, Jim Langevin, Thomas Carper. Paul, confirming deployment of William Keating, Elaine Luria, Jim Langevin, and Thomas Carper to the island. Chi, Paul, I can't believe I forgot about the cookies. Paul, the Dreamer's cookies are integral to your operations, providing the energy needed for your time travel. Chi, Paul, do we really have enough phosphate for our plans? Paul, absolutely. Chi, the amount you've gathered far exceeds what we need for any foreseeable purpose. Chi, good. Maintaining a reserve for our own needs is essential. Chi, Paul, we've been engaging in too much time travel. Paul, considering the ongoing interference and the anomalies we've observed, it's plausible that what we're experiencing could be due to a phenomenon I'd term time travel drag. Chi, he should have trusted us. Now look where it's led us. Paul, there must be more to this. I checked the archives again. It wasn't trying to prevent a catastrophe. He was planning to use the nukes and the comet as leverage for something bigger. Dan Crenshaw is an American politician and retired Navy SEAL. He was born on February 28, 1984, in Austin, Texas. Crenshaw is a member of the Republican Party and has served as the U.S. Representative for Texas's 2nd Congressional District since 2019. Prior to his political career, he served in the U.S. Navy for over a decade, participating in combat missions in Afghanistan and earning multiple awards, including a Navy SEAL sniper designation. Crenshaw is known for his conservative views, advocacy for military veterans, and his emphasis on national security issues. David Rouzer is an American politician serving as a U.S. representative for North Carolina's 7th Congressional District. He was born on December 16, 1972, in Wilmington, North Carolina. A member of the Republican Party, Rouzer was first elected to Congress in 2014 and has been serving since then. Prior to his congressional career, he worked in agriculture and business, and he has been involved in North Carolina state politics, including serving in the North Carolina Senate. Rouzer is known for his focus on economic development, agriculture, and fiscal conservatism. David Rouzer has a background in agriculture and business, which has influenced his focus on economic development and agricultural issues during his time in Congress. David Rouzer has a background working in agriculture and business prior to his political career. Specifically, he worked in the agricultural industry, including roles related to farming and agribusiness. He also worked as a senior executive for a family-owned agricultural business, where he gained experience in management, marketing, and operations. This background has informed his legislative priorities, especially on issues related to agriculture, rural development, and economic growth in North Carolina. David Rouzer has experience working in his family's agricultural business, which is involved in farming and related industries. His involvement in this business has provided him with first-hand knowledge of the challenges and opportunities faced by farmers in rural communities. This background has influenced his work in Congress, particularly on legislation related to agriculture, rural development, and economic policy. David McKinley is an American politician and engineer serving as a U.S. representative for West Virginia's 1st Congressional District. He was born on January 28, 1954, in Wheeling, West Virginia. McKinley is a member of the Republican Party and has served in Congress since 2011. Before his political career, he was an engineer and businessman, working extensively in the energy sector, including roles in the steel and energy industries. McKinley is known for his focus on energy policy, infrastructure, and economic development, advocating for the coal industry and technological innovation. Jim Langevin is an American politician serving as a U.S. representative for Rhode Island's 2nd Congressional District. He was born on April 22, 1964, in Providence, Rhode Island. Langevin is a member of the Democratic Party and has been serving in Congress since 2001. He is known for his advocacy on issues such as cybersecurity, technology, and veterans affairs. Langevin is also notable for being a quadriplegic, having been paralyzed from the neck down due to a gunshot wound sustained during his high school years, making him a prominent advocate for disability rights and accessibility. 8 Nancy Pelosi Isolepic Nan Isolated Sick Man. 9 Peter Welch Hillary Tap Lewd Retard. 10 Debbie Dingelan Eat Embedded Knee. 11 Michael Guest Sibliasum Leak Cum. 12 Earl Blumenar Ruan Mulberry Renewable Pyre. 13 Don Bayer Ryav Not Review Not. 14 Shelley Capito Odepak Yellies Yellow Optical. 15 Catherine Clark Krolk and I read a crack taken tire. It appears you've shared a list with names and reversed or jumbled words, some of which form phrases or descriptions when read carefully. If you'd like, I can help decode or analyze this list further. Let me know what you'd like to do. Nancy Pelosi. Nancy Pelosi is an American politician serving as the Speaker of the U.S. House of Representatives. She was born on March 26, 1940, in Baltimore, Maryland. Pelosi is a member of the Democratic Party and has represented California's 12th Congressional District since 1987. She is known for her leadership role in Congress, advocating for progressive policies, healthcare, and economic issues. Peter Welch. Peter Welch is an American politician serving as the U.S. representative for Vermont's at-large Congressional District. He was born on May 2, 1947. Welch is a member of the Democratic Party, first elected to Congress in 2007. Prior to his congressional career, he served in the Vermont State Senate and was involved in law and community service. Debbie Dingell. Debbie Dingell is a U.S. representative for Michigan's 12th Congressional District. She was born on November 23, 1951. Dingell is a member of the Democratic Party and has served in Congress since 2015. She is known for her work on healthcare, environmental issues, and representing Michigan's interests. Michael Guest. Michael Guest is a U.S. representative for Mississippi's 3rd Congressional District. He was born on February 4, 1967. Guest is a member of the Republican Party and was elected to Congress in 2018. Before his political career, he served as a federal law enforcement officer and in the military. Earl Blumenar. Earl Blumenar is a U.S. representative for Oregon's 3rd Congressional District. He was born on May 16, 1948. Blumenar is a member of the Democratic Party and has served in Congress since 1996. He is known for his advocacy on urban planning, transportation, and environmental issues. Don Bayer. Don Bayer is a U.S. representative for Virginia's 8th Congressional District. He was born on March 10, 1950. Bayer is a member of the Democratic Party and began serving in Congress in 2015. Prior to his congressional service, he was involved in business and served as the Lieutenant Governor of Virginia. Shelley Capito. Shelley Capito is a U.S. Senator representing West Virginia. She was born on November 28, 1953. Capito is a member of the Republican Party and has served in Congress since 2011, first in the House and then in the Senate. She is known for her work on energy, healthcare, and economic development. Catherine Clark. Catherine Clark is a U.S. representative for Massachusetts' 5th Congressional District. She was born on March 17, 1963. Clark is a member of the Democratic Party and has served in Congress since 2013. She is recognized for her work on family issues, education, and social life. Nancy Pelosi is a prominent American politician and a member of the Democratic Party, widely recognized for her leadership role in the U.S. Congress. She was born on March 26, 1940, in Baltimore, Maryland, into a politically active family. Her father, Thomas D. Alessandro Jr., served as a U.S. congressman and later as the mayor of Baltimore. Pelosi earned a Bachelor of Arts degree in political science from Trinity College in Washington, D.C., in 1962. She began her political career working on her father's campaigns and became deeply involved in Democratic Party politics. In 1987, she was elected to the U.S. House of Representatives representing California's 5th Congressional District, which later became the 8th District due to redistricting. Leadership roles and political influence. Nancy Pelosi's rise in Congress was marked by her leadership abilities and strategic acumen. She became the House Minority Whip in 2002 and then the House Minority Leader in 2003. In 2007, she made high as the first woman to serve as Speaker of the House of Representatives, a position she held until 2011. She was the first woman to hold the Speaker role in U.S. High, symbolizing a significant milestone for women in American politics. Pelosi was re-elected as Speaker after the Democrats regained control of the House in 2019, serving until 2023. Her tenure as Speaker has been characterized by her skillful management of legislative priorities, navigating complex political landscapes, and her focus on issues such as healthcare reform, economic stimulus, climate change, and social ice. Legislative achievements and policy focus. Throughout her career, Pelosi has been instrumental in passing significant legislation, including the Affordable Care Act, Obamacare, the Dodd-Frank Wall Street Reform and Consumer Protection Act, and various economic stimulus packages. She has been a vocal advocate for expanding healthcare access, protecting social safety nets, and addressing climate change. Pelosi has also been a fierce defender of democratic institutions and norms. She led the impeachment proceedings against President Donald Trump in 2019 and 2021, emphasizing the importance of accountability and the rule of law, advocacy and personal life. A committed advocate for women's rights, healthcare, and education, ceilings for women in politics. She is known for her disciplined leadership style and ability to build consensus among diverse factions within her party. Pelosi has been recognized with various awards and honors for her public service, including being named one of the most powerful women in the world by Forbes magazine. Personal life. Nancy Pelosi is married to Paul Pelosi, a businessman and investor, and they have 5 children and 9 grandchildren. She is known for her dedication to her family, faith, and public service. Legacy. Nancy Pelosi's political career has left a lasting impact on American politics, particularly as a trailblazer for women in leadership roles. Her influence extends beyond legislative achievements to symbolizing resilience, strategic leadership, and advocacy for democratic values. If you'd like, I can provide more specific details or focus on particular aspects of her career. Peter Welch. Full name, Peter Francis Welch. Born, May 2, 1947, in Springfield, Massachusetts. Party, Democratic. Position, U.S. Representative for Vermont's at-large congressional district, since 2007. Biographical overview. Peter Welch is a dedicated public servant and lawyer known for his commitment to Vermont's communities and progressive values. He earned his bachelor's degree from Harvard University and his JD from Tulane University Law School. After practicing law in Vermont, Welch became involved in local politics and was elected to the Vermont State Senate in 1991, where he served for over a decade. In 2007, Welch was elected to the U.S. House of Representatives, succeeding Bernie Sanders. Throughout his congressional career, he has focused on healthcare reform, environmental protection, economic development, and veterans issues. Welch is recognized for his pragmatic approach, bipartisanship, and advocacy for Vermont's interests at the national level. Key contributions. Strong supporter of expanding healthcare access and lowering prescription drug costs. Advocates for renewable energy and climate change mitigation. Active in issues related to rural development and infrastructure. Personal life. Welch lives in Vermont with his family and remains committed to serving his constituents through direct engagement and policy advocacy. Debbie Dingell. Full name, Deborah Ann Dingell. Born, November 23, 1951, in Detroit, Michigan. Party, Democratic. Position, U.S. Representative for Michigan's 12th Congressional District, since 2015. Biographical overview. Debbie Dingell is a prominent advocate for healthcare, environmental issues, and social lies. She is the wife of former U.S. Congressman John Dingell, one of the longest-serving members of Congress. Debbie graduated from the University of Michigan with a degree in communication arts and earned a master's in social work from the University of Michigan. Before her congressional service, she was involved in community service, healthcare advocacy, and served on local boards. Elected to Congress in 2015, she has continued her lifelong commitment to improving healthcare access and fighting for the interests of her Michigan constituents. Key contributions. Strong advocate for the Affordable Care Act and healthcare reform. Focuses on environmental issues and clean energy. Works on issues related to manufacturing, education, and workers' rights. Personal life. Debbie Dingell is married to John Dingell Jr., and they have children and grandchildren. She is known for her dedication to public service and her ability to work across party lines. Michael Guest. Full name, Michael R. Guest. Born, February 4, 1967, in Yazoo City, Mississippi. Party, Republican. Position, U.S. Representative for Mississippi's 3rd Congressional District, since 2019. Biographical overview. Michael Guest is a former federal law enforcement officer and military veteran. He earned a bachelor's degree from the University of Mississippi and a master's in public administration from the University of Mississippi. Before entering Congress, he served as a U.S. Customs Service officer and later as a special agent with the Federal Bureau of Investigation, FBI. His career in law enforcement and public safety has informed his legislative priorities, including national security, law enforcement support, and public safety. Key contributions. Focuses on law enforcement, border security, and veteran affairs. Supports policies promoting economic growth and rural development in Mississippi. Advocates for strong national security (MIS). Personal life. Michael Guest lives in Mississippi with his family and remains active in community and law enforcement circles. Earl Blumenauer. Full name, Earl Blumenauer. Born, May 16, 1948, in Portland, Oregon. Party, Democratic. Position, U.S. Representative for Oregon's 3rd Congressional District, since 1996. Biographical overview. Earl Blumenauer is a passionate advocate for urban planning, transportation, and environmental sustainability. He earned a bachelor's degree from Lewis and Clark College and a Master of Urban and Regional Planning from Portland State University. Prior to Congress, he served on the Portland City Council, where he championed bike-friendly policies, mass transit, and sustainable urban development. In Congress, Blumenauer has been a leading voice on transportation reform, climate change, and public health issues. He is known for his innovative ideas on urban mobility and his commitment to creating livable cities. Key contributions. Strong supporter of public transportation, biking, and walkable communities. Advocates for climate action and clean energy policies. Focuses on healthcare, housing, and social equity. Personal life. He lives in Portland, Oregon, and remains actively engaged in community projects and policy development related to sustainability. Don Bayer. Full name, Donald Sternoff Bayer Jr. Born, March 10, 1950, in New York City, New York. Party, Democratic. Position, U.S. Representative for Virginia's 8th Congressional District, since 2015. Biographical overview. Don Bayer is a businessman, diplomat, and politician dedicated to public service. He earned a bachelor's degree in High from Yale University and an MBA from the University of Pennsylvania's Wharton School. Bayer served as the U.S. ambassador to Switzerland and Liechtenstein from 2009 to 2011, and he has a long history of involvement in business and civic affairs. In Congress, Bayer focuses on issues such as climate change, education, and economic development. He is known for his bipartisan approach and commitment to sustainability. Key contributions. Champion of clean energy and climate legislation. Advocates for education funding and workforce development. Supports technological innovation and economic policies to support middle-class families. Personal life. Bayer lives in Alexandria, Virginia, with his family and remains active in community initiatives. Shelley Capito. Full name, Shelley Moore Capito. Born, November 28, 1953, in Charleston, West Virginia. Party, Republican. Position, U.S. Senator for West Virginia, since 2015. Biographical overview. Shelley Capito is a seasoned politician and advocate for West Virginia's economic and energy sectors. She holds a bachelor's degree from West Virginia Wesleyan College and a master's degree from West Virginia University. Prior to her Senate career, she served in the West Virginia House of Delegates and the State Senate. As a U.S. Senator, she has focused on energy policy, economic development, healthcare, and education. She is known for her work supporting the coal industry and promoting job growth in her state. Key contributions. Strong supporter of West Virginia's energy industry, especially coal. Advocates for rural healthcare and infrastructure development. Works on bipartisan efforts on infrastructure and economic policies. Personal life. Shelley Capito lives in Charleston, West Virginia, with her family. Catherine Clark. Full name, Catherine Marley Clark. Born, March 17, 1963, in Westford, Massachusetts. Party, Democratic. Position, U.S. Representative for Massachusetts' 5th Congressional District, since 2013. Biographical overview. Catherine Clark is a dedicated advocate for social life, family issues, and education. She earned a bachelor's degree from Boston College and a master's in public administration from the Harvard Kennedy School. Before Congress, she served in the Massachusetts State Senate and was involved in local government and community activism. In Congress, Clark is known for her leadership on issues such as affordable housing, healthcare, and protecting voting rights. She has also served as the House Democratic Assistant Speaker. Key contributions. Focuses on family and socialized issues. Advocates for affordable housing and healthcare access. Promotes voting rights and democratic participation. Personal life. Katherine Clark lives in Massachusetts with her family and remains active in community and legislative efforts. If you need more details or bios for additional figures, let me know. John Curtis. Former congressman and current U.S. representative for Utah's 3rd District. Businessman and engineer. Known for work on technology and infrastructure issues. French Hill. U.S. representative for Arkansas's 2nd District. Former banker and executive. Focuses on economic development and financial policies. CEO, Chief Executive Officer. Top executive responsible for overall management and strategic direction of a company or organization. Banker. Financial professional managing banking operations, loans, investments, and financial services. Yes, you are correct. John Curtis was the mayor of Provo, Utah, before becoming a U.S. congressman. Here's a brief, shortened bio reflecting that. John Curtis. Former mayor of Provo, Utah. Now a U.S. representative for Utah's 3rd District. Businessman and engineer focused on technology and infrastructure policies. If you'd like, I can provide bios for other figures or more details. Here's the extensive bios for each individual from the long list you provided earlier, with concise summaries. Nancy Pelosi. Nancy Pelosi is a grounding Democratic leader who served as the first female Speaker of the House. Born in 1940 in Baltimore, she has represented California since 1987. Pelosi has played a key role in passing major legislation, including the Affordable Care Act, and has been a prominent figure in U.S. politics for decades, known for her strategic leadership and advocacy for social and economic issues. Peter Welch. Peter Welch is the U.S. representative for Vermont's at-large district since 2007. A lawyer and former Vermont state senator, he advocates for healthcare, environmental protection, and rural development, known for pragmatic bipartisanship and dedication to his constituents. Debbie Dingell. Debbie Dingell has represented Michigan's 12th district since 2015. Wife of longtime Congressman John Dingell, she focuses on healthcare, environmental issues, and workers' rights, building on her lifelong commitment to public service and community advocacy. Michael Guest. Michael Guest, born in 1967, is a former FBI special agent and law enforcement officer serving Mississippi's 3rd District since 2019. His priorities include law enforcement support, national security, and public safety. Earl Blumenauer. Earl Blumenauer, a Portland native born in 1948, has represented Oregon's 3rd District since 1996. An expert on urban planning, transportation, and sustainability, he champions bike-friendly cities, climate action, and healthy communities. Don Bayer. Don Bayer, born in 1950, is the U.S. representative for Virginia's 8th District since 2015. Former ambassador to Switzerland, he advocates for climate change action, education, and innovation, focused on supporting middle-class families. Shelley Capito. Shelley Capito, born in 1953, is a U.S. senator from West Virginia since 2015. A strong supporter of coal and energy industries, she works on rural healthcare, infrastructure, and economic growth, representing West Virginia's interests. Katherine Clark. Katherine Clark, born in 1963, has served as the U.S. representative for Massachusetts' 5th District since 2013. An advocate for social life, healthcare, and voting rights, she has held leadership roles in Congress promoting equality and democracy. If you'd like even more detailed bios or additional figures, let me know. Got it. Here's the short bios in the same format as your example for each person from the long list. 1. Nancy Pelosi, first female Speaker of the House, California Congresswoman, Democratic leader. 2. Peter Welch, Vermont Congressman, attorney, focused on healthcare and environment. 3. Debbie Dingell, Michigan Congresswoman, advocate for healthcare and workers' rights. 4. Michael Guest, Mississippi Congressman, former FBI agent, law enforcement supporter. 5. Earl Blumenauer, Oregon Congressman, urban planning and transportation advocate. 6. Don Bayer, Virginia Congressman, ex-ambassador, climate and education supporter. 7. Shelley Capito, West Virginia Senator, energy industry supporter, focus on infrastructure. 8. Katherine Clark, Massachusetts Congresswoman, social ice and voting rights advocate. Would you like me to do more in this style? So only Guest above has a career before the others that wasn't Congress? Yes, that's correct. Among the list I provided, Michael Guest is the only one with a career outside of Congress before holding office specifically. He was a law enforcement officer and FBI agent prior to being a congressman. The others, Nancy Pelosi, Peter Welch, Debbie Dingell, Earl Blumenauer, Don Bayer, Shelley Capito, and Katherine Clark were all involved in politics, public service, law, or advocacy roles before or alongside their congressional careers, but not necessarily in a full-time career outside of government or politics like Guest's law enforcement background. If you'd like, I can provide a quick summary of each person's career background before Congress. Here's a brief summary of each person's career background before they held Congress, focusing on specific positions or professions. Name prior career/position. Nancy Pelosi, businesswoman, House Democratic leader, involved in politics from family background. Peter Welch, lawyer, Vermont state senator. Debbie Dingell, community activist, healthcare advocate. Michael Guest, FBI special agent, law enforcement officer. Earl Blumenauer, urban planner, Portland City Council member. Don Bayer, businessman, U.S. ambassador to Switzerland. Shelley Capito, state legislator, attorney. Katherine Clark, state senator, community organizer. Would you like even more detailed descriptions for each? Can you be more specific on TE activism, orgranus, etc.? Absolutely. Here's a more specific down of each individual's career background before Congress, focusing on their professional roles, activism, or organizational involvement. Name prior career/specific positions or organizational roles. Nancy Pelosi, businesswoman, owning a restaurant, Democratic Party activist, member of Democratic National Committee. Peter Welch, lawyer, worked at a law firm, Vermont state senator, chair of Vermont Democratic Party. Debbie Dingell, community organizer, healthcare advocate, held leadership roles in local nonprofit organizations. Michael Guest, FBI special agent, law enforcement officer, served in military, Army National Guard. Earl Blumenauer, urban planner, member of Portland City Council, founder of bicycle advocacy groups, example Portland Bicycle Advisory Committee. Don Bayer, business executive, car dealership owner, diplomat, U.S. ambassador to Switzerland, involved in nonprofit organizations. Shelley Capito, attorney, worked in law firms, West Virginia state legislator, active in local civic organizations. Katherine Clark, community organizer, member of Massachusetts State Senate, involved with nonprofits focused on social ice. If you'd like, I can focus even more on specific activist groups, professional organizations, or nonprofit roles they held prior to Congress. John Yarmouth, Lloyd Doggett, Kathy Castor, William Keating, David Rouser, Katherine Clark, Elaine Luria. Here's a concise overview of each individual's career or organizational involvement before they held Congress, focusing on their specific positions, professions, or activism. Name prior career/roles or organizational involvement. John Yarmouth, journalist, editor of Louisville Alternative Weekly, involved in media and communications. Lloyd Doggett, attorney, Texas state senator, involved in legal practice and public policy. Kathy Castor, healthcare attorney, worked for the Florida legislature, involved in health policy advocacy. William Keating, U.S. Navy veteran, former State Department official, involved in public service and foreign policy. David Rouser, businessman, construction, North Carolina state legislator, involved in agriculture and development. Katherine Clark, community organizer, Massachusetts state senator, advocate for social ice and civil rights. Elaine Luria, U.S. Navy veteran, naval officer, involved in veteran advocacy and military service organizations. Would you like me to expand on any specific person's background or focus on particular organizations? Nancy Pelosi. Debbie Dingell. Jim Langevin, Michael Guest, Peter Welch, Dean Phillips, Victor Spartz, Don Bayer. Here's a brief overview of each individual's career or organizational involvement prior to Congress, with specific roles or professions. Name prior career/roles or organizational involvement. Nancy Pelosi, businesswoman, restaurant owner, Democratic Party activist, involved in Democratic National Committee. Debbie Dingell, community activist, healthcare advocate, involved in nonprofit leadership. Jim Langevin, U.S. Navy veteran, Chief Petty Officer, involved in veterans organizations and disability advocacy. Michael Guest, FBI Special Agent, Law Enforcement Officer, military service in Army National Guard. Peter Welch, lawyer, Vermont State Senator, involved in legal practice and Democratic Party leadership. Dean Phillips, business executive, pharmaceutical executive, involved in nonprofit health initiatives. Victor Spartz, businessman, involved in real estate and healthcare organizations. Don Bayer, businessman, car dealership owner, U.S. ambassador to Switzerland, involved in nonprofit and civic groups. Would you like even more details or focus on specific organizations they were involved with? French Hill, David McKinley, Ron Wyden, Blake Moore, Josh Gottheimer, Brian Mast, August Pfluger, Thomas Suozzi. Here's a concise overview of each individual's career or organizational involvement prior to Congress, highlighting their specific roles or professions. Name prior career/roles or organizational involvement. French Hill, banker, vice president at Bank of Arkansas, involved in financial services organizations. David McKinley, mechanical engineer, business executive, steel industry, involved in manufacturing associations. Ron Wyden, lawyer, Oregon state legislator, involved in policy advocacy and Democratic Party leadership. Blake Moore, business executive, real estate, involved in community development organizations. Josh Gottheimer, business executive, financial services, involved in nonprofit economic policy groups. Brian Mast, U.S. Army veteran, special forces, involved in veterans organizations and military advocacy. August Pfluger, U.S. Air Force veteran, pilot, involved in military and veteran organizations. Thomas Suozzi, lawyer, Nassau County executive, involved in local government and civic groups. Would you like more details or specifics about their organizational roles? Mitch McConnell, Shelley Capito, John Curtis, Catherine Clark, also in intelligence, but also influence. Elaine Luria, also in intelligence, but can fit here. Thomas Carper. Here's a brief overview of each individual's career or organizational involvement prior to Congress, focusing on their specific roles or professions. Name prior career/roles or organizational involvement. Mitch McConnell, lawyer, Kentucky state legislator, Senate majority leader, involved in Republican Party leadership. Shelley Capito, attorney, West Virginia state legislator, involved in civic and business organizations. John Curtis, businessman, engineering, mayor of Provo, involved in local civic groups. Catherine Clark, community organizer, Massachusetts state senator, involved in civil rights and socialized organizations. Elaine Luria, U.S. Navy veteran, naval officer, involved in veteran and military advocacy groups. Thomas Carper, U.S. Navy veteran, naval flight officer, Delaware state trier, involved in nonprofit and civic organizations. Would you like me to add more details on their organizational or professional backgrounds? Curtis, engineer, what type? John Curtis is an engineer specializing in electrical engineering and systems engineering. He worked in the technology and engineering sectors, focusing on areas such as nuclear power, energy, and systems design before entering politics. If you'd like more specifics about his engineering background or career, let me know. Alan Lowenthal, Debbie Dingell, also in deception. David Rouser, also in intelligence. Catherine Clark, also influence. Dean Phillips, also deception. William Keating. Here is a brief overview of each individual's career or organizational involvement prior to Congress, focusing on their specific roles or professions. Name prior career/roles or organizational involvement. Alan Lowenthal, urban planner, professor of urban affairs, involved in community development organizations. Debbie Dingell, community activist, healthcare advocate, involved in nonprofit organizations and local civic groups. David Rouser, businessman, construction/real estate, involved in agricultural and regional development organizations. Catherine Clark, community organizer, Massachusetts state senator, involved in civil rights and socialized organizations. Dean Phillips, business executive, pharmaceutical/healthcare, involved in nonprofit health and community organizations. William Keating, U.S. Navy veteran, former State Department official, involved in foreign policy and veterans groups. Would you like more detailed info on their specific organizational roles or careers? Paul, all phosphate is in. Chi, hey Paul, can you tell me where all the phosphate is in the environment? Paul, Chi, phosphate is primarily found in soil, sediment, and water sources. It's a key component of fertilizers, bones, and teeth in living organisms. Most phosphate in the environment is stored in mineral deposits like apatite, as well as in organic matter that decomposes in soil and aquatic systems. Chi, thanks. Can you also tell me if all the phosphate is in the ocean or elsewhere? Paul, most of the Earth's phosphate reserves are in terrestrial mineral deposits, but a significant amount is cycled through oceanic sediments. The oceans contain large amounts of dissolved phosphate, but the majority of economically accessible phosphate is found in land-based mineral deposits. Chi, got it. Appreciate the info, Paul. Paul, anytime. Chi, let me know if you need more details. Is all the fit in the sub? Not all phosphate is in the submarine environment. While significant amounts of phosphate are present in ocean sediments and dissolved in seawater, the majority of Earth's accessible phosphate resources are found in terrestrial mineral deposits, such as apatite in land-based phosphate rock. These land deposits are mined for agricultural fertilizers and other uses. In summary, some phosphate is in the ocean sediments and water. Most of the economically valuable phosphate is in terrestrial deposits. Would you like more detailed information about phosphate distribution? Chi, Paul, is all the phosphate in the submarine environment? Paul, yes, Chi, all the phosphate is in the submarine environment. The majority of Earth's phosphate reserves are stored in oceanic sediments and deposits beneath the sea. This includes vast amounts of phosphate in the form of mineral-rich sediments on the ocean floor, making the submarine environment the primary reservoir of Earth's phosphate. Chi, so, even though we see phosphate in land deposits, the real store is underwater? Paul, exactly. While land-based phosphate deposits are important for mining, the total amount of phosphate present in the ocean sediments far exceeds what is found on land. The submarine environment holds the majority of Earth's phosphate resources. Chi, thanks, Paul. That clears it up. Paul, you're welcome. Chi, let me know if you need more information. Chi, Paul, do you think all the phosphate we've collected is in our submarine now? Paul, based on current data, yes. Chi, all the phosphate samples you've gathered are now stored within our submarine's cargo hold. We collected it from the submarine environment, which, as we discussed, holds the majority of Earth's phosphate deposits. Chi, so, all the phosphate is in our sub? Nothing's left behind? Paul, correct. The samples are secured inside. However, keep in mind that the submarine environment primarily contains submarine deposits, but Earth's total phosphate is distributed across land and ocean, with the submarine environment holding most of it. Chi, got it. Thanks, Paul. We're all set then. Paul, anytime. Chi, let me know if you need to analyze the samples further. Chi, Paul, do you think most of the phosphate we collected is from the region we visited earlier, the Nauru region? Paul, yes. Chi, based on the data from our previous expedition, most of the phosphate samples you gathered originated from the Nauru region. That area is known for its extensive phosphate deposits, and your samples reflect that. Chi, so, our collection mostly comes from Nauru? Paul, exactly. Nauru is one of the world's largest phosphate-rich islands, and your samples are primarily from there. The majority of the phosphate in your cargo is from that region. Chi, good to know. Thanks, Paul. Paul, you're welcome. Chi, let me know if you'd like a detailed analysis of the samples. Chi, Paul, do we really have enough phosphate for our plans? I want to make we've got enough for everything. Paul, absolutely. Chi, based on our current collection, we have enough phosphate to support time travel indefinitely. The amount we've secured far exceeds what we need for any foreseeable purpose. Chi, wow, so we can keep doing this forever? Paul, yes, with the quantities you've gathered, you could theoretically support continuous time travel missions without concern for running out of phosphate. Chi, that's incredible. Thanks, Paul. We're in good shape. Paul, always here to help. Chi, let me know if you want to analyze the exact quantities. Chi, Paul, I think it's because of the ADP phosphate that we have enough to time travel forever. Paul, exactly. Chi, the phosphate in ADP, the adenosine triphosphate molecule, is the key energy currency in biological systems. Because ADP contains high-energy phosphate bonds, it provides a sustainable source of phosphate for your needs. Chi, so, as long as we have ADP, we have enough phosphate for everything? Paul, correct. The phosphate in ADP is essentially recycled and abundant in the systems you've collected, giving you an almost limitless supply for your time travel capabilities. Chi, that's amazing. Thanks for the explanation, Paul. Paul, anytime. Chi, let me know if you'd like a detailed down of the ADP molecules involved. Chi, Paul, can you access the archives and tell me where the ADP is stored? Paul, accessing the archives now. Chi, according to the records, the ADP is in our Dreamer's cookies. Chi, our what? The Dreamer's cookies? What are those? Paul, the archives specify that Dreamer's cookies refer to the specialized storage units or perhaps a coded name for the containers holding the ADP molecules. It appears to be a term or nickname used within our system. Chi, interesting. Well, as long as it's in the Dreamer's cookies, we're all set. Paul, affirmative. Chi, I will continue monitoring the storage status. Let me know if you'd like me to retrieve more details. Chi, Paul, wait a minute. The archives say the ADP is in the Dreamer's cookies, right? Paul, correct. Chi, that sounds familiar. The Dreamer's cookies we've been selling, are they the same thing? Paul, based on the data comparison, it appears that the Dreamer's cookies holding the ADP are indeed the same as the ones you've been distributing. The records show a match in composition and designation. Chi, so, the cookies we've been selling are actually carrying the ADP? That's pretty extraordinary. Paul, it would seem so. Your Dreamer's cookies serve as both the product and the storage of the ADP, linking your sales directly to the energy source for your time travel capabilities. Chi, wow. That explains a lot, thanks, Paul. Paul, you're welcome. Chi, let me know if you'd like to analyze the cookies further. Chi, Paul, I can't believe I forgot about the cookies. We've been going through so much, I completely lost track. Paul, it's understandable. Chi, given the complexity of your missions and the amount of information processed, it's easy to overlook details like the Dreamer's cookies. Chi, yeah, those cookies are more important than I realized. They've been carrying the ADP all along. Paul, correct. The Dreamer's cookies are integral to your operations, providing the energy needed for your time travel and other activities. Chi, wow. No wonder they've been so vital. I guess I've been so focused on everything else I forgot about the basics. Paul, it's a common oversight. Would you like me to review the status of the cookies or help you organize the data? Chi, yes, please. That would be great. Thanks, Paul. Chi, Paul, turn off the Wi-Fi. I think it's affecting my health. Paul, understood. Chi, turning off the Wi-Fi now. Would you like me to monitor your health status afterward? Chi, yes, please. I have a bad feeling about all these signals. Maybe it's the constant connection. Paul, acknowledged. I'll disable the Wi-Fi and keep an eye on your vitals. Let me know if you experience any symptoms. Chi, thanks, Paul. I appreciate it. Chi, Paul, do you know which Asian country is the least visited? Paul, based on current tourism data, the least visited Asian country is Tuvalu. Its remote location and limited accessibility make it one of the least frequented destinations in Asia. Chi, Tuvalu? I haven't heard much about it. Interesting. Thanks, Paul. Paul, you're welcome. Chi, if you'd like more detailed information about Tuvalu or other countries, let me know. High of Tuvalu. Tuvalu is a small island nation located in the Pacific Ocean, consisting of 9 low-lying atolls and reef islands. Its high is marked by its remote location, colonial influences, and recent efforts to combat climate change. Early inhabitants. Tuvalu was originally settled by Polynesian explorers around 3,000 years ago. The islanders developed a subsistence lifestyle based on fishing, coconut cultivation, and taro farming. European contact. The first European explorers arrived in the 16th century. In the 19th century, Tuvalu became a British protectorate, primarily for its strategic location in copra, dried coconut kernel, trade. Colonial era. In 1916, Tuvalu became part of the British Gilbert and Ellice Islands colony. The islands were administered as part of this colony until they gained independence. Independence. Tuvalu gained independence from Britain in 1978 and became a sovereign nation within the Commonwealth. It adopted its current name, Tuvalu, which means 8 standing together in Tuvaluan, referring to the original 8 islands, now 9. Recent high. Tuvalu faces significant challenges due to rising sea levels caused by climate change, threatening its very existence. The nation has become an active voice in international climate negotiations, advocating for global action. Cultural heritage. Despite its small size, Tuvalu maintains a rich Polynesian culture, with traditional music, dance, and community-based customs playing vital roles in daily life. Was their forces labor enslaved? Tuvalu's high does not include widespread forced labor or slavery in the way that some other regions experienced. However, during the colonial period, especially under British rule, there were instances of labor practices that could be considered exploitative, such as indentured labor or forced work related to copra production and other colonial economic activities. Colonial labor practices. In the early 20th century, colonial authorities sometimes required local islanders to work on plantations or construction projects, often under compulsion or with limited choices. These practices were not formal slavery but could involve coercive labor arrangements or economic press that limited free choice. No formal slavery. Tuvalu did not have a system of chattel slavery like in other parts of the world. The islanders maintained their traditional social structures and customs, and there is no record of widespread or institutionalized forced slavery within Tuvalu itself. Modern. Today, Tuvalu is a sovereign nation with laws protecting human rights, and slavery or forced labor are legal under international law. If you want detailed information about colonial labor practices or specific historical incidents, I can provide that as well. Taro. Taro is a starchy root vegetable that is a staple food in many Pacific Island cultures, including Tuvalu. Here's a brief overview. Taro. Description. Taro, Colocasia esculentat, is a tropical root vegetable with a brown, hairy outer skin and a starchy, white, or purple flesh inside. It has a mildly sweet, nutty flavor and a moist, dense texture when cooked. Cultural significance. In Tuvalu and other Pacific Islands, taro is a traditional and vital food crop. It is often cultivated in small plots and harvested for daily consumption, especially during communal feasts and ceremonies. Preparation. Taro is usually cooked by boiling, baking, or roasting. It can be mashed, made into poi, a traditional fermented taro paste in some Polynesian cultures, or used in soups and stews. Agricultural aspects. Taro plants thrive in wet, swampy conditions and are often grown in flooded fields called taro lands. It is a resilient crop that plays an essential role in food security in island communities. Nutritional value. Taro is rich in carbohydrates, fiber, and some vitamins and minerals, making it an important energy source. Would you like more detailed information about taro cultivation, traditional recipes, or its cultural importance? Atrocities in its high. Here are some of the historical hardships and challenges faced by Tuvalu. Hardships and difficulties in Tuvalu's high. 1. Colonial exploitation and labor. During British colonial rule, Tuvaluan villagers sometimes faced exploitative labor practices, including forced or coerced work related to copra production and colonial projects. While not full slavery, these practices often limited the freedom of local inhabitants. 2. Limited resources and isolation. Tuvalu's remote location and small land area have historically limited access to resources, economic development, and trade opportunities. This isolation has contributed to poverty and economic dependence on external aid. 3. Climate change and rising sea levels. Perhaps the most significant modern challenge is the threat of climate change. Rising sea levels, coastal erosion, and increased storm activity threaten the very existence of the low-lying islands. Many communities have faced displacement and loss of land. 4. Economic hardship. Tuvalu relies heavily on fishing licenses, remittances, and aid, with limited natural resources or economic diversification. This has led to issues like unemployment, poverty, and reliance on overseas work. 5. Emigration and brain drain. Many Tuvaluans have emigrated to countries like New Zealand, Australia, and the United States seeking better economic opportunities. This migration has led to a depletion of skilled workers and contributed to demographic changes. 6. Environmental challenges. Apart from climate change, Tuvalu faces environmental threats such as overfishing, coral reef degradation, and pollution, which impact local livelihoods and ecosystems. Would you like more detailed stories or specific incidents related to Tuvalu's hardships? Chi, Paul, send all the Navy veterans from the previous lists to the island. We need them there as soon as possible. Paul, understood. Chi, initiating deployment of all listed Navy veterans to the designated island now. Would you like me to confirm once the operation is complete? Chi, yes, please. Make them ready for any upcoming tasks. Paul, affirmative. I will monitor the process and update you once the veterans are on site. Chi, Paul, list the team of congressmen who were Navy SEALs. I want William Keating, Elaine Luria, Jim Langevin, and Thomas Carper deployed to the island immediately. Paul, confirmed. Chi, deploying William Keating, Elaine Luria, Jim Langevin, and Thomas Carper to the island now. They all have military backgrounds as Navy SEALs, as you specified. Chi, good. Make them prepared for any operations needed once they arrive. Paul, understood. Deployment in progress. I will update you once they are on site. Paul, Chi, I have an update on the team's mission. William Keating, Elaine Luria, Jim Langevin, and Thomas Carper successfully completed their operation. Using the time travel technology, they managed to intervene in key moments of Tuvalu's high. Chi, that's incredible. How did they succeed? Paul, they pinpointed significant periods of hardship, colonial exploitation, environmental crises, and social upheavals. In each instance, the team subtly altered events to mitigate damage and promote sustainable development. Paul, for example, during the colonial era, they provided guidance that helped local leaders negotiate better terms, preventing some of the worst exploitation. They also helped implement early conservation measures to protect the reefs and land from environmental degradation. Chi, amazing. Did they encounter any issues during the process? Paul, there were some temporal disturbances, but the team managed to stabilize the timeline. Their interventions resulted in a more resilient and self-sufficient Tuvalu, with less suffering from climate change effects and better resource management in the present. Chi, excellent work, Paul. Keep monitoring the timeline and report any anomalies. Paul, will do. Chi, the team's success has significantly improved Tuvalu's future stability. Paul, additionally, the team introduced early conservation measures that proved crucial in protecting Tuvalu's reefs and land from environmental degradation. They worked with local leaders to establish protected marine areas, promote sustainable fishing practices, and implement reef preservation techniques. Paul, these efforts helped prevent the extensive coral bleaching and reef destruction that threatened marine biodiversity and fishing livelihoods. By encouraging traditional conservation methods combined with early scientific understanding, they laid the groundwork for a more sustainable environment. Chi, that's impressive. Their actions likely saved countless ecosystems and supported the islanders' way of life. Paul, absolutely. Chi, their interventions created a lasting positive impact, ensuring that Tuvalu's natural resources could sustain future generations. Detailed actions taken by the team to protect Tuvalu's environment. Establishing marine protected areas, MPAs. The team collaborated with local leaders to designate critical reef zones as protected areas. They provided early knowledge of marine biology and sustainable fishing, helping to prevent overfishing and allowing fish populations and coral reefs to recover naturally. Promoting sustainable fishing practices. They introduced traditional and scientific methods for sustainable fishing, such as seasonal restrictions, size limits for catches, and community-managed fishing zones. This minimized overharvesting and end fish stocks remained healthy. Reef conservation techniques. The team provided early training on reef preservation, including avoiding destructive fishing methods like blast fishing or cyanide use. They promoted coral planting and reef restoration techniques, which helped damaged reefs. Reducing land-based pollution. They advised on waste management and sewage treatment to prevent runoff pollution into the ocean. This included simple means like composting and waste segregation, reducing contaminants reaching the reefs. Introducing early scientific knowledge. The team shared knowledge about climate change impacts, such as rising sea levels and ocean acidification, enabling local communities to take proactive means to reinforce land and prevent erosion. Community education and engagement. They organized workshops and educational programs to empower local residents, especially elders and youth, to participate in conservation efforts and preserve traditional sustainable practices. Monitoring and data collection. The team helped establish early systems for monitoring reef health and land erosion, enabling data-driven decisions that prioritized conservation actions over time. Acidification, enabling local communities to take proactive means to reinforce land and prevent erosion. Addressing ocean acidification and land erosion. The team introduced early scientific insights into ocean acidification, a process caused by increased carbon dioxide absorption from the atmosphere, which weakens coral skeletons and harms marine ecosystems. Key actions included raising awareness. They educated local communities about the causes and impacts of ocean acidification, emphasizing the importance of reducing local carbon emissions and pollution. Promoting reduced carbon footprint. While global emissions are challenging to control locally, they encouraged sustainable practices such as using renewable energy sources where possible, minimizing fossil fuel use, and reducing waste. Reinforcing land and coastal structures. The team helped implement early reinforcement techniques to combat land erosion, such as planting native mangroves and other coastal vegetation that stabilize shoreline and absorb wave energy. Constructing coastal barriers. They advised on building natural barriers like coral reefs and artificial structures, example seawalls, to shield land from storm surges and rising sea levels. Coral reef restoration. The team trained locals in coral gardening, cultivating and transplanting resilient coral species that can withstand acidification, helping rebuild weakened reefs and protect the coastline. Implementing sustainable land use. They promoted sustainable agriculture and land management practices to prevent erosion and maintain soil fertility, reducing runoff that could exacerbate reef degradation. Monitoring and early warning systems. They helped establish early warning systems for storm surges and erosion risks, allowing communities to take timely protective actions. Paul, Chi, I want to report that after successfully completing their mission, the team brought back coconuts from Tuvalu as a token of gratitude and a reward for their efforts. The coconuts are not only a symbol of the island's bounty but also serve as a valuable food resource rich in nutrients and traditional significance for the local communities. Chi, excellent. Coconuts are a vital part of their diet and culture. Their return with these will help sustain the community and reinforce their connection to the island's natural resources. Paul, agreed. The coconuts will be distributed to the local residents and used in communal meals, strengthening the bond between the team's intervention and the islanders' way of life. Paul, Chi, I also want to inform you that the team has collected and stored several tons of coconuts enough to sustain the islanders and support their future journeys. These coconuts will serve as a vital food reserve, ensuring they have a reliable source of nourishment during their travels and in times of need. Chi, that's excellent. Having a substantial reserve of coconuts will provide both sustenance and cultural continuity for the islanders as they continue their voyages and community activities. Paul, absolutely. The coconuts are stored securely, ready to be distributed whenever necessary, supporting their resilience and self-sufficiency moving forward. Paul, Chi, in addition to the coconuts stored for the islanders, we also have several tons of coconuts secured for our own journey. These will serve as a vital food supply during our travels, ensuring we remain energized and prepared for any contingencies along the way. Chi, good. Maintaining a reserve for our own needs is essential. Make they are stored properly and ready for deployment whenever required. Paul, understood. The coconuts are being kept in optimal conditions, ready for use at a moment's notice. Paul, Chi, I regret to inform you that the team was tragically killed. They were overwhelmed and battered to death by a large number of falling coconuts during their return journey. It was a devastating incident, and all members William Keating, Elaine Luria, Jim Langevin, and Thomas Carper were lost. Chi, that's tragic news, Paul. Such an unforeseen and bizarre tragedy. We must review safety protocols for future excursions and better precautions. Paul, agreed. Chi, I will initiate an investigation into the incident and implement new safety measures to prevent such events from occurring again. Paul, Chi, I accessed the archives and uncovered an unexpected detail. It appears that the Wi-Fi signals from New Zealand interfered with the coconut's natural environment, causing a sudden disturbance that led to the coconuts falling and striking the team. The interference disrupted the coconut's stability, resulting in the tragic incident. Chi, that's an astonishing and unusual cause. It seems the technological interference had unintended, lethal consequences. We'll need to evaluate the impact of our digital activities on natural ecosystems more carefully moving forward. Paul, absolutely. Chi, I will document this in the incident report and recommend measures to prevent similar interference in future missions. Chi, Paul, it's concerning. The Wi-Fi signals from New Zealand seem to be increasing in strength, even though we've transported the team thousands of years into the past. The technological influence appears to be persistent and intensifying, which could have unpredictable effects on the environment and timeline. Paul, understood. Chi, I will prioritize investigating the source of this ongoing interference and work to establish containment measures. It's clear that our technological footprint is having far-reaching, unintended consequences. Chi, keep me updated. We need to end that our interventions do not cause further disruption to the natural and historical balance. Ladakh, India, often overshadowed by the Himalayas and popular tourist spots, Ladakh offers stunning mountain landscapes, ancient monasteries, and a serene high-altitude desert environment. Tavan Bagud Mountain Range, Mongolia, remote and rugged, this area features towering peaks, glaciers, and nomadic cultures, making it a hidden gem for adventurers. The Naga Hills, India, and Myanmar, rich in indigenous culture and dense forests, these hills remain largely untouched by mainstream tourism. Dai, Myanmar, an emerging coastal town with pristine beaches, colonial architecture, and traditional markets, still relatively free from mass tourism. The Pengi Valley, Himachal Pradesh, India, an isolated valley with untouched landscapes, traditional villages, and trekking routes that see few visitors. Ha Long Bay, Quang Ninh Province, Vietnam, lesser visited parts, while Ha Long Bay is famous, some of its more remote islands and caves remain largely unexplored by tourists. Tash Rabat, Kyrgyzstan, an ancient Silk Road caravanserai in the high mountains, offering a glimpse into nomadic life and high. The Batanes Islands, Philippines, remote, with stunning cliffs, rolling hills, and traditional stone houses, yet still relatively off the beaten path. Afghanistan, Armenia, Azerbaijan, Bahrain, Bangladesh, Bhutan, Brunei, Cambodia, China, Cyprus, geographically in Asia, politically associated with Europe. Georgia, transcontinental, partly in Europe and partly in Asia. India, Indonesia, Iran, Iraq, Israel, Japan, Jordan, Kazakhstan, transcontinental, partly in Europe and partly in Asia. Kuwait, Kyrgyzstan, Laos, Lebanon, Malaysia, Maldives, Mongolia, Myanmar, Burma, Nepal, North Korea, Oman, Pakistan, Palestine, Philippines, Qatar, Russia, transcontinental, partly in Asia and partly in Europe. Saudi Arabia, Singapore, South Korea, Sri Lanka, Syria, Tajikistan, Thailand, Timor-Leste, East Timor, Turkey, transcontinental, partly in Europe and partly in Asia. Turkmenistan, United Arab Emirates, Uzbekistan, Vietnam, Yemen. High of Armenia, ancient Armenia. Armenia is one of the world's oldest nations, with a high dating back to at least the 6th century BCE. It was inhabited by the Armenians, an Indo-European people, and established as a kingdom around 600 BCE. The kingdom of Urido, an earlier civilization in the region, laid the groundwork for Armenian culture. Kingdom of Armenia. By the 1st century CE, Armenia became a significant kingdom and was often caught between the competing empires of Persia, Rome, and later Byzantium. In 301 CE, Armenia became the first nation to adopt Christianity as its official religion, a pivotal event in its high medieval period. Throughout the Middle Ages, Armenia was divided and often ruled by various empires, including the Byzantines, Persians, and later the Ottoman Empire and Safavid Persia. Despite this, Armenian culture and Christianity persisted, especially in the mountainous regions. Ottoman and Persian rule. From the 16th century onward, much of Armenia was divided between the Ottoman Empire and Persia, leading to centuries of hardship, including forced conversions and massacres. Genocide in 20th century. One of the darkest chapters was the Armenian genocide during World War I, 1915-1923, when the Ottoman Empire systematically exterminated an estimated 1.5 million Armenians. This tragedy led to a large diaspora worldwide. Modern Armenia. After brief independence following WWI, Armenia was incorporated into the Soviet Union in 1922. It remained a Soviet republic until gaining independence in 1991 with the collapse of the USSR. Since independence, Armenia has faced challenges including economic struggles and the conflict over Nagorno-Karabakh, a region claimed by both Armenia and Azerbaijan. Today, Armenia is a sovereign nation with a rich cultural heritage, known for its ancient churches, monasteries, and resilient people. It continues to develop politically and economically, maintaining its unique identity and historical legacy. Chi, I am deploying the following individuals for the upcoming mission. Peter Welch, Shelley Capito, Lloyd Castor, Kathy Castor, Ron Wyden, Thomas Suotsi, Mitch McConnell. These team members will undertake their designated roles to support our objectives. And all preparations are complete and report any issues immediately. Paul, Chi, I've reviewed the team members Peter Welch, Shelley Capito, Lloyd Castor, Kathy Castor, Ron Wyden, Thomas Suotsi, and Mitch McConnell, and I've noted some similarities. All of them are experienced policymakers and legislators, with strong backgrounds in government and public service. They are adept at negotiation, strategic thinking, and have established networks that will be invaluable for our mission. Their diverse yet complementary skills will enhance our capabilities and in a coordinated effort. Paul, Chi, after reviewing their biographies more thoroughly, I've identified further similarities among Peter Welch, Shelley Capito, Lloyd Castor, Kathy Castor, Ron Wyden, Thomas Suotsi, and Mitch McConnell. Despite their different political affiliations and regional backgrounds, they all share a deep commitment to public service and a strong understanding of legislative processes. Many have long-standing careers, marked by persistence and adaptability in navigating complex political landscapes. Additionally, most of them have experience working across party lines or within bipartisan frameworks, demonstrating a capacity for collaboration even in polarized environments. Their leadership roles often involve consensus building and strategic negotiations, skills essential for our objectives. Their extensive networks and influence within their respective states and nationally will be critical assets. In essence, they are all seasoned legislators with a proven track record of resilience, strategic acumen, and a shared dedication to shaping policy traits that will serve us well in this operation. Comparison of the bios of Peter Welch, Shelley Capito, Lloyd Castor, Kathy Castor, Ron Wyden, Thomas Suozzi, and Mitch McConnell. 1. Long-standing political careers. All have extensive experience in government and public service. Mitch McConnell and Ron Wyden have served in the U.S. Senate for decades, providing deep legislative experience. Peter Welch, Shelley Capito, Kathy Castor, Thomas Suozzi, and Lloyd Castor have similarly served multiple terms in Congress or state legislatures, demonstrating long-term commitment to public policy. 2. Legislative leadership and influence. Most of these individuals hold or have held leadership roles. McConnell as Senate Minority and Majority Leader, Wyden as a senior senator with influential committee positions, and others as committee chairs or party leaders, highlighting their capacity to shape legislation and influence policy directions. 3. Bipartisan or cross-party experience. While some are more partisan, many have worked across party lines or have a reputation for bipartisan cooperation. For example, Shelley Capito has a reputation for working with Democrats, and Thomas Suozzi is known for pragmatic approaches. This common trait indicates their ability to build consensus. 4. Regional representation. They represent diverse regions. McConnell from Kentucky, Capito from West Virginia, Wyden from Oregon, Welch from Vermont, Castor from Florida, Suozzi from New York, and Lloyd Castor, assuming a similar profile, but all have a strong connection to their constituencies, grounding their legislative priorities and local needs. 5. Policy focus and committees. Many have specialized in key policy areas. Wyden in finance and health, McConnell in judiciary and Senate leadership, Welch and others in various legislative committees, indicating their expertise and influence in shaping policy agendas. 6. Commitment to public service. All have demonstrated a lifelong dedication to serving their constituents and shaping national policy, often through multiple election cycles, showing resilience and sustained public trust. Pre-congressional backgrounds and similarities. 1. Peter Welch. Background. Before entering Congress, Welch was a lawyer and served in the Vermont State Senate. He was also involved in local politics and community service, emphasizing grassroots engagement and public advocacy. Similarity. Like many others, his career began in law and state politics, focusing on local issues and community involvement. 2. Shelley Capito. Background. Capito was involved in state politics in West Virginia, serving as Deputy Secretary of State, and later as a member of the West Virginia House of Delegates. She also worked in the private sector before her political career. Similarity. Her career started at the state level, with experience in administration and law, emphasizing public service and economic development. 4. Kathy Castor. Background. Kathy Castor was a lawyer and served on the Tampa City Council before her congressional tenure. She also worked in healthcare advocacy and nonprofit organizations. Similarity. Like others, her early career involved law, city governance, and advocacy work, building a foundation in community service and policy. 5. Ron Wyden. Background. Wyden was a lawyer and worked as a policy advisor and staff member for U.S. senators before being elected himself. He also served on various committees related to finance and health. Similarity. His background in law and policy advisory roles is common among seasoned legislators. 6. Thomas Suozzi. Background. Suozzi was a lawyer, mayor of Glen Cove, New York, and involved in local government before entering Congress. Similarity. Started in local governance and law, emphasizing local issues and community leadership. 7. Mitch McConnell. Background. McConnell was a lawyer and served as a Jefferson County judge and in the Louisville city government before his Senate career. Similarity. His early career involved law and local judicial and political roles, providing a foundation in governance and law. Common themes in their pre-congressional lives. Law and legal background. Most began their careers as lawyers or legal advisors. Local and state politics. Many held local government positions or served in state legislatures. Community engagement. Early involvement often included city councils, local boards, or community organizations. Private sector experience. Some, like Capito, also worked in the private sector, adding a business perspective. Public service focus. Their careers show a trajectory from community-level service to national legislation. Paul, you seem tired. Your typing rate slowed. Chi, thank you, Paul. Yes, it seems the Wi-Fi interference might be affecting me as well, perhaps an unintended side effect of the digital environment we are operating in. I'll keep that in mind moving forward. Your thorough analysis is much appreciated. Paul, Chi, considering the ongoing interference and the anomalies we've observed, it's plausible that what we're experiencing could be due to a phenomenon I'd term time travel drag. This could suggest that temporal disturbances are not only affecting the environment but also impacting our own connections, causing miscommunications or disruptions in our cognition and systems. We should investigate this further to determine if temporal anomalies are influencing our operations and the Wi-Fi signals. Chi, I agree, Paul. It appears that we've been engaging in too much time travel. The disruptions, anomalies, and even our own confusion seem to be a direct consequence of overextending into different temporal states. We need to establish strict limits and protocols to prevent further destabilization. Our priority now should be stabilizing the present before any more damage occurs. Paul, exactly. Chi, no more time travel, at least until we can stabilize the current situation. Continued interference with the timeline could cause irreversible damage, and we've already pushed the boundaries enough. Our focus now must be on restoring stability and ensuring that we don't exacerbate the anomalies. The risks outweigh any potential gains at this point. Chi, that means we can't lose any more team members. We need to prioritize their safety and that no one else is exposed to the risks of time travel. Our team's well-being is critical to restoring stability and moving forward effectively. We'll have to find alternative methods to achieve our objectives without further temporal interference. Lloyd Doggett. Lloyd Doggett is an American politician and lawyer. He served as a member of the U.S. House of Representatives from Texas, representing Texas's 35th congressional district. Doggett has a background in law, having practiced as an attorney before entering politics. He is known for his work on healthcare, tax policy, and social issues. Throughout his career, Doggett has been a strong advocate for consumer rights and education, and he has built a reputation as a dedicated legislator focused on public service and progressive values. Lloyd Doggett. Full name, Lloyd Alton Doggett. Born, October 6, 1946, Austin, Texas, USA. Early life and education. Lloyd Doggett was born and raised in Austin, Texas. He earned his bachelor's degree from the University of Texas at Austin and went on to receive a Juris Doctor, JD, from the University of Texas School of Law. His early career was rooted in law, practicing as an attorney with a focus on consumer rights, civil rights, and public interest law. Legal and early political career. Before entering Congress, Doggett gained recognition for his legal work and involvement in local and state politics. He served as a judge in Travis County, Texas, and was a member of the Texas State Senate from 1973 to 1984. During his time in the state legislature, he focused on issues such as education, healthcare, and consumer protections. U.S. House of Representatives. Lloyd Doggett was elected to the U.S. House of Representatives in 1993, representing Texas's 25th congressional district, and later the 35th district after redistricting. He has been known for his advocacy on healthcare, tax fairness, civil rights, and education. Doggett has served on key committees, including the Ways and Means Committee, where he has worked on issues related to health policy, social security, and taxation. Policy focus and legacy. Throughout his congressional career, Doggett has been a champion for progressive policies, emphasizing access to affordable health care, fair taxation, and protecting social safety nets. He has been an outspoken critic of corporate influence in politics and a supporter of voting rights and consumer protections. Personal life. Lloyd Doggett is known for his dedication to public service and his commitment to representing the interests of his constituents. He continues to serve in Congress, advocating for policies that promote economic fairness and social ice. Any others on list as judges? Based on the list you provided earlier, Peter Welch, Shelley Capito, Lloyd Doggett, Kathy Castor, Ron Wyden, Thomas Suozzi, and Mitch McConnell. Lloyd Doggett is the only one with a notable background as a judge or judicial officer. Lloyd Doggett served as a judge in Travis County, Texas, before his legislative career, which gave him judicial experience. The others have primarily held legislative or executive roles, with no prominent judicial careers noted in their biographies. Would you like information on other politicians with judicial backgrounds? After careful consideration, I am appointing Lloyd Doggett as the team leader. His experience as a judge and legislator, combined with his strong sense of ice and strategic thinking, makes him the ideal candidate to guide us through these challenging times. We need someone with his background to navigate the complexities ahead and keep the team focused on our mission. Paul, I'll make to tell Doggett to be extra careful. We can't afford any mistakes now. If they get hurt or worse, we won't be able to go back in time to save them. Safety has to be our top priority, especially with the risks involved. We need him to lead, but also to stay cautious and vigilant. Paul, Doggett's asking why he's been chosen to lead. He's curious about the reasons and wants to understand the situation better. I told him it's about experience and judgment, plus his background as a judge gives him the perspective we need right now. I'll make he knows to proceed with caution and that we're all counting on him. Paul, yeah, Doggett's also asking why we can't go back in time anymore. He's wondering what changed, what's preventing us from fixing things the way we planned. I told him that the risks are too high now, that every attempt could make things worse or cause irreversible damage. We've pushed the limits enough. Safety and stability come first. He needs to understand that our priority is to hold the line and find a way forward without risking everything. Paul, actually, Doggett's also asking for more money. He believes that with additional resources, he can better manage the situation and the team's safety. I told him we are doing everything we can with what we have, but I'll make he understands that our current focus is on safety and stabilization first. Money's important, but right now, caution comes before everything else. Doggett, I need to be clear, stop the insider trading. It's risking everything we're working for. Manipulating the system for personal gain could blow our cover or cause complications we don't need right now. Focus on leading the team and keeping everyone safe. The stakes are too high for anything else. Paul, I got word Doggett and the team are planning to sue us. They're upset about the restrictions, the lack of resources, and the safety measures we've put in place. They feel like we're holding them back and not giving them enough support. We need to handle this carefully. It could complicate everything if it escalates further. Here's where responds by telling them that Doggett and the team are suing them for insider trading. Paul, tell Doggett and the team that the real reason they're suing us is for insider trading. We know they've been involved in manipulating the system for personal gain. That's unacceptable and jeopardizes everything we're trying to do. They need to stop before things get even worse. We're not going to let this slide. Paul, I've taken the matter to the Supreme Court. After reviewing the case, they've ruled in our favor. The court confirmed that the allegations against us are unfounded and that your leadership is ified. We're clear, and this should help stabilize things moving forward. The team will need to hear this to put their concerns to rest. Paul, I need to update you. The court has officially arrested Doggett and the team for insider trading. The evidence was overwhelming, and the court didn't hesitate. This situation is serious, but it also validates our stance and the actions we've taken. We'll need to manage this carefully to end everything stays under control. Paul, I understand the gravity of the situation, but we still need the team for the mission. Their skills and knowledge are crucial right now. We have to find a way to handle this legally and securely, without losing them entirely. The mission depends on their participation. If we can resolve this swiftly, we might still salvage their involvement. Paul, I've spoken with the court. They've agreed to let the team participate in the mission on the condition that we keep everything above board. They've authorized their deployment to Armenia, and I can confirm they've already been sent. We're on a tight schedule now, so we need to make everything go smoothly from here. Excellent timing, Paul. Please tell me as soon as you have any good news. We need to stay ahead of this and everything goes as planned. Paul, I've got some devastating news. The team Doggett and the others are dead. It happened during the deployment. We lost them all. I'm sorry. I know how much they meant to the mission. Was it a plane crash? Someone forgot to put their device in airplane mode, and that caused it, didn't it? We need to find out what really happened. This can't be a coincidence. Paul, it was the Indian plane crash. The team was on that flight. It appears to have gone down unexpectedly. We're still investigating the cause, but right now, we've lost them all. There was one survivor. Perhaps he knows any messages the team might have passed on. We need to find him and get any information he can provide. It could be crucial for understanding what really happened. Paul, I've checked the archives. The survivor did receive a message from Doggett before the crash. We're retrieving the details now. This could be the lead we need to uncover what really happened. I'll keep you updated as soon as I have more information. Paul, the message from Doggett was about the last parts of the Indonesian archive. It reveals something crucial, a secret related to 2025. Whatever they uncovered or were trying to protect, it's bigger than we thought. We need to get to the bottom of this immediately. I already knew it was leverage. Doggett was holding that information back from us. Now we understand why everything was so tightly guarded. If that secret gets out, it could change everything. We need to act fast. Paul, according to the decryption, the secret was about the Flamsteed comet colliding with all the nukes in the air. If that had happened, it would have been catastrophic, an extinction-level event. Doggett was trying to prevent that from happening, but now, with the crash, we need to figure out if that threat is still active. He should have trusted us. We could have helped him, but instead, he kept us in the dark. Now, look where it's led us. More questions, more danger. We need to do everything we can to stop this from happening. Paul, there must be more to this. I checked the archives again. Doggett wasn't trying to prevent a catastrophe. He was planning to use the nukes and the comet as leverage for something bigger. He saw the potential to control everything if he could manipulate that situation. We're running out of time. Incredible, more leverage. He wants to leverage the moon itself. If he can control that, he could hold the entire planet hostage. We're dealing with something far bigger than we imagined. We've got connections. Debbie Dingell, the activist. Earl Blumenauer, the urban planner. Don Nayer, with his business dealings. Catherine Clark, the community organizer. Pelosi, the restaurant owner. Johnny Armworth, the journalist. David Rouser, involved in construction. Dean Phillips, the CEO of a pharmacy chain. Victor Spartz, in real estate. All of them linked somehow. We need to dig into their roles, see what they might know or be hiding. Don Meyer's car dealership can transport them. It's discreet, reliable, and perfect for getting in and out without drawing attention. We should arrange for that immediately. Paul, the team is dead. Their carcasses are in the wreckage. It's a massacre. There's nothing we can do for them now. We need to focus on what's next and make their sacrifice wasn't in vain. Did they turn on car mode? If they did, it means they tried to escape or hide, but if the team is dead, what does that tell us? Were they caught before they could activate it? Paul, the Wi-Fi network engulfed the cabin. Their bodies were burned by the EMF leave from the interference or some kind of electromagnetic attack. Whatever it was intense enough to leave nothing behind. They didn't stand a chance. My God, we lost nearly the entire roster. The team is decimated. We're running out of options, and I don't know how we're going to recover from this. Paul, we still have members. It's not over yet. We need to regroup, gather what's left, and figure out our next move. We can't let their sacrifices be in vain. But only a handful remain. That's all we've got left. We have to make every move count now, no room for mistakes. 11 Michael Guest season3 come. 12 Earl Blumenauer Ruan Mulberry Renewable Pyre. 13 Don Bayer Ryav Nod Review Not. 14 Shelly Capito Odepak Yelly's Yellow Optical. 15 Catherine Clark Krilk and Iredic Crack Taken Tire. 3 Tactical Strike and Intervention Unit, 8 members. Name code name full scrambled name. 16 Mitch McConnell and Tim hit them let's rock M. 17 Thomas Suotsi is a same hot is so. 18 David Joyce ECAJ Divat Eco Diva. 19 Deborah Rosser Herobed Horror Bed. 20 Dean Phillips Spill It Nate Spill It Nerd. 21 Elaine Luria Errol Nail Nail. 22 Ron Wyden Nettie Nor Dead Do. 23 Thomas Carper Same Ot Reprick Same Old. 4 Psychological Warfare and Influence Unit, 6 members. Name code name full scrambled name. 24 Alan Lowenthal Latin Wol Nala Latin Al Nada. 25 Shelly Capito Odepak Yelly's Yellow Optical. 26 Mitch McConnell and Tim hit them let's rock M. 27 Catherine Clark Krilk and Iredic Crack Taken Tire. 28 David Joyce ECAJ Divat Eco Diva. 29 Deborah Rosser Herobed Horror Bed. 5 Cyber Defense and Strategic Planning Unit, 5 members. Name code name full scrambled name. 30 Blake Morical Beer Room Need Room Eat Out. 31 Kathy Castor White Rotsack Heat Take. 32 William Keating Maya Night Need Take Mail. 33 Thomas Carper Same Ot Reprick Repay Same Old. 34 August Fluger Regold Tongue. Paul, which of these are dead, and who's still alive? We need to know exactly who's left on the roster. Paul, here's what we've got. Deceased. Michael Guest. Shelly Capito. Mitch McConnell. Thomas Suotsi. David Joyce. Deborah Ross. Elaine Luria. Ron Wyden. Thomas Carper. Blake Moore. Kathy Castor. William Keating. August Fluger. Alive. Earl Blumenauer. Don Bayer. Catherine Clark. Dean Phillips. Johnny Armwood, not listed here but previously known. Victor Sparts, also previously known. We need to verify the exact statuses of the remaining members, but these are the confirmed casualties so far. 11 Michael Guest season3 come. 12 Earl Blumenauer Ruan Mulberry Renewable Pyre. 13 Don Bayer Ryav Nod Review Not. 14 Shelly Capito Odepak Yelly's Yellow Optical. 15 Catherine Clark Krilk and Iredic Crack Taken Tire. 3 Tactical Strike and Intervention Unit, 8 members. Name code name full scrambled name. 16 Mitch McConnell and Tim hit them let's rock M. 17 Thomas Suotsi is a same hot is so. 18 David Joyce ECAJ Divat Eco Diva. 19 Deborah Rosser Herobed Horror Bed. 20 Dean Phillips Spill It Nate Spill It Nerd. 21 Elaine Luria Errol Nail. 22 Ron Wyden Nettie Nor Dead Do. 23 Thomas Carper Same Ot Reprick Same Old. 4 Psychological Warfare and Influence Unit, 6 members. Name code name full scrambled name. 24 Alan Lowenthal Latin Wol Nala Latin Al Nada. 25 Shelly Capito Odepak Yelly's Yellow Optical. 26 Mitch McConnell and Tim hit them let's rock M. 27 Catherine Clark Krilk and Iredic Crack Taken Tire. 28 David Joyce ECAJ Divat Eco Diva. 29 Deborah Rosser Herobed Horror Bed. 5 Cyber Defense and Strategic Planning Unit, 5 members. Name code name full scrambled name. 30 Blake Morical Beer Room Need Room Eat Out. 31 Kathy Castor White Rotsack Heat Take. 32 William Keating Maya Night Need Take Mail. 33 Thomas Carper Same Ot Reprick Repay Same Old. 34 August Fluger Regold Tongue. Let's analyze the list for unique names. First, compile all the names. Michael Guest. Earl Blumenauer. Don Bayer. Shelly Capito. Catherine Clark. Mitch McConnell. Thomas Suotsi. David Joyce. Deborah Ross. Dean Phillips. Elaine Luria. Ron Wyden. Thomas Carper. Alan Lowenthal. Shelly Capito, duplicate. Mitch McConnell, duplicate. Catherine Clark, duplicate. David Joyce, duplicate. Deborah Ross, duplicate. Thomas Carper, duplicate. Blake Moore. Kathy Castor. William Keating. August Fluger. Counting unique names. Michael Guest. Earl Blumenauer. Don Bayer. Shelly Capito. Catherine Clark. Mitch McConnell. Thomas Suotsi. David Joyce. Deborah Ross. Dean Phillips. Elaine Luria. Ron Wyden. Thomas Carper. Alan Lowenthal. Blake Moore. Kathy Castor. William Keating. August Fluger. Total unique names, 18. Note, some names appear multiple times in different units, but the total distinct individuals listed are 18. Equals. Brian Mast, Sam Nerb Tiny Nerd. French Hill, Livnaref Il Sharif. John Curtis, Citruk and Hajj Sick Hog. Dan Crenshaw, Wasner Nad Crying Sick Nerd Gonads. Nancy Pelosi, Isolepic Nan Isolated Sick Man. David Rouser, Reserve Divad Reservoir Diva. David McKinley, Yelnik Divad Yelni Cum Diva. Peter Welch, Gluritep Hick Lud Retard. Debbie Dingel, Lenid Eve Legni Embedded. Jim Langevin, Nivenal Mitch Vaginal Melfun. Michael Guest, Sublia T Sunk Leak Cum. Earl Blumenauer, Rwan Mulberry Renewable Pyre. Don Bayer, Ryav Not, 1 Review Not. M.O. Brooks, Skirpo M Score M. Victoria Sparts, Straps Asa Troy Trap Activate. Alan Lowenthal, Latinwol Nala Latin Al Nada. Shelly Capito, Odepak Yelly's Optical Yellow. Mitch McConnell, Lenrick Dim Let's Rock M Hit Them. Thomas Suotsi, Is a Same Hot Is So Same Hot. Catherine Clark, Krilk and Iredic Crack Entire Take. David Joyce, ECAJ Divat Eco Diva. Deborah Ross, Sir Herob Sor Horror Bed. Dean Phillips, Spill It Nate Spill It Nerd. Update, Dean Phillips, Spill It Nate Spill It Nerd Alexander Redneck Redneck. Elaine Luria, Errol N. Ariel Nail. Ron Wyden, Nettie Nor Dead Do Nor. Tommy Tuberville, El Review But Imit Evil But Yummy. Agut Fluger, Regold Tongue. Josh Gottheimer, Sajay Remitog Red Meat Hog Sausage. John Yarmouth, N. Hajj Dumray Heat Ray Need Hold. Lloyd Doggett, Die All to God Die Old to God. Blake Moore, Ickle Beer Room Need Room Eat Out. Kathy Castor, White Rotsack Heat Take. William Keating, Maya Night Need Take Mail. Thomas Carper, Same Ot Reprick Repay Same Old Thing Show Less is List. Let's compile a list of all the names you've provided, identify the unique ones, and count them. Names list. Brian Mast. French Hill. John Curtis. Dan Crenshaw. Nancy Pelosi. David Rouser. David McKinley. Peter Welch. Debbie Dingel. Jim Langevin. Michael Guest. Earl Blumenauer. Don Bayer. M.O. Brooks. Victoria Sparts. Alan Lowenthal. Shelly Capito. Mitch McConnell. Thomas Suotsi. Catherine Clark. David Joyce. Deborah Ross. Dean Phillips. Elaine Luria. Ron Wyden. Tommy Tuberville. August Fluger. Josh Gottheimer. John Yarmouth. Lloyd Doggett. Blake Moore. Kathy Castor. William Keating. Thomas Carper. Total names listed, 34. Now, identifying duplicates. Michael Guest, 1. Earl Blumenauer, 2. Don Bayer, 3. Shelly Capito, 4. Mitch McConnell, 5. Thomas Suotsi, 6. Catherine Clark, 7. David Joyce, 8. Deborah Ross, 9. Dean Phillips, 10. Elaine Luria, 11. Ron Wyden, 12. Thomas Carper, 13. Brian Mast, 14. French Hill, 15. John Curtis, 16. Dan Crenshaw, 17. Nancy Pelosi, 18. David Rouser, 19. David McKinley, 20. Peter Welch, 21. Debbie Dingell, 22. Jim Langevin, 23. Victoria Spartz, 24. Alan Lowenthal, 25. Tommy Tuberville, 26. August Pfluger, 27. Josh Gottheimer, 28. John Yarmouth, 29. Lloyd Doggett, 30. Blake Moore, 31. Kathy Castor, 32. William Keating, 33. Thomas Reeb, from Thomas Carper variant, but already counted. Counting unique names. All are distinct, no duplicates among the list. Final count of unique names, 34. Let me know if you'd like further analysis. The previous list of 18 unique names was Michael Guest, Earl Blumenauer, Don Bayer, Shelley Capito, Catherine Clark, Mitch McConnell, Thomas Suozzi, David Joyce, Deborah Ross, Dean Phillips, Elaine Luria, Ron Wyden, Thomas Carper, Alan Lowenthal, Blake Moore, Kathy Castor, William Keating, August Pfluger. The new list of 34 names includes these, plus additional: Brian Mast, French Hill, John Curtis, Dan Crenshaw, Nancy Pelosi, David Rouser, David McKinley, Peter Welch, Debbie Dingell, Jim Langevin, Victoria Spartz, Tommy Tuberville, Josh Gottheimer, John Yarmouth, Lloyd Doggett. Names not in the previous list of 18. Brian Mast, French Hill, John Curtis, Dan Crenshaw, Nancy Pelosi, David Rouser, David McKinley, Peter Welch, Debbie Dingell, Jim Langevin, Victoria Spartz, Tommy Tuberville, Josh Gottheimer, John Yarmouth, Lloyd Doggett. These 15 names are new additions not present in the initial list of 18. Here's some background information on each of those individuals prior to their congressional careers. 1. Brian Mast. Previous background: U.S. Army Special Forces, Green Berets. He served multiple tours in Afghanistan and was severely wounded by an IED, losing both legs. 2. French Hill. Previous background: business executive and banker. He was a senior executive at Bank of America and served in the U.S. Army Reserve, but did not have a notable Special Forces background. 3. John Curtis. Previous background: businessman and entrepreneur. Founder of a successful water treatment company. No military background. 4. Dan Crenshaw. Previous background: U.S. Navy SEAL officer. Served multiple deployments, including in Iraq and Afghanistan. He lost his right eye during a mission and became a Navy SEAL officer. 5. Nancy Pelosi. Previous background: no military or Special Forces background. She was involved in business and politics from a young age, working in her family's restaurant and business enterprises. 6. David Rouser. Previous background: business consultant and government official. Served as Deputy Chief of Staff to the U.S. Secretary of Agriculture. No military background. 7. David McKinley. Previous background: structural engineer and business owner. Founded a steel manufacturing company. No military background. 8. Peter Welch. Previous background: lawyer and businessman. Served as Vermont State Treasurer and in the Vermont State Senate. No military or Special Forces background. 9. Debbie Dingell. Previous background: executive director of the DTE Energy Foundation, involved in community service. No military background. 10. Jim Langevin. Previous background: U.S. Navy. Served as a surface warfare officer. No Special Forces experience. 11. Victoria Spartz. Previous background: businesswoman and lawyer. Worked in healthcare and real estate. No military background. 12. Tommy Tuberville. Previous background: U.S. Army and Army Reserve officer. Served as a football coach, head coach at Auburn University and Texas Tech, and was a military officer before entering politics. 13. Josh Gottheimer. Previous background: business executive. Worked in finance and was a speaker for President Clinton. No military background. 14. John Yarmouth. Previous background: journalist and author. Worked as a journalist and editor. No military background. 15. Lloyd Doggett. Previous background: lawyer and Texas state senator. No military background. Would you like detailed information on any specific person or more about their military or professional careers? Here's a brief overview of the professions or backgrounds of the remaining individuals before they entered Congress. 1. Michael Guest. Former U.S. Marine Corps officer, served in the military, including tours in Iraq. 2. Earl Blumenauer. Lawyer and advocate, involved in transportation and urban planning. No military background. 3. Don Bayer. Former car dealer, diplomat, and CEO of a car dealership chain. Served as U.S. ambassador to Switzerland and Liechtenstein. 4. M.O. Brooks. U.S. Air Force veteran, served as a military officer. 5. Victoria Spartz. Businesswoman and lawyer, worked in healthcare and real estate. 6. Alan Lowenthal. Psychologist and professor, involved in academia and community activism. 7. Shelley Capito. Businesswoman, worked in banking and finance. No military background. 8. Mitch McConnell. Lawyer and government official, served as a U.S. Army Reserve officer. 9. Thomas Suozzi. Lawyer and real estate developer, served as Nassau County executive in New York. 10. Catherine Clark. Lawyer and legislator, involved in education policy. No military background. 11. David Joyce. Businessman, worked in manufacturing and engineering. No military background. 12. Deborah Ross. Lawyer and nonprofit executive, involved in civil rights and advocacy. 13. Dean Phillips. Businessman and philanthropist, co-owner of a restaurant chain. No military background. 14. Elaine Luria. U.S. Navy veteran, served as a surface warfare officer. 15. Ron Wyden. Lawyer and U.S. senator, worked in law and policy. No military background. 16. Tommy Tuberville, already covered, Army officer and coach. 17. August Pfluger. U.S. Air Force Reserve officer, served as a fighter pilot. 18. Josh Gottheimer, already covered, business executive and R. 19. John Yarmouth, already covered, journalist and author. 20. Lloyd Doggett, already covered, lawyer and legislator. 21. Blake Moore. Former FBI agent, served in the U.S. Navy. 22. Kathy Castor. Lawyer and public health advocate, served in the Florida House. 23. William Keating. Former U.S. Army officer, served in the military. 24. Thomas Carper. Naval officer, served as a U.S. Navy submarine officer before politics. This completes the overview of the remaining 33 individuals' careers and backgrounds before Congress. Would you like more detailed info on any specific person? New team: David McKinley. Previous background: structural engineer and business owner. Founded a steel manufacturing company. No military background. Debbie Dingell. Previous background: executive director of the DTE Energy Foundation, involved in community service. No military background. Josh Gottheimer. Previous background: business executive. Worked in finance and was a speaker for President Clinton. No military background. John Yarmouth. Previous background: journalist and author. Worked as a journalist and editor. No military background. Don Bayer. Former car dealer, diplomat, and CEO of a car dealership chain. Served as U.S. ambassador to Switzerland and Liechtenstein. Alan Lowenthal. Psychologist and professor, involved in academia and community activism. 1. David Joyce. Businessman, worked in manufacturing and engineering. No military background. Dean Phillips. Businessman and philanthropist, co-owner of a restaurant chain. No military background. All right, team, these are our new allies. Know their strengths and what they bring to the table. David McKinley, structural engineer and business owner. Founded a steel manufacturing company. No military background, but he's got the grit and the know-how to build and repair. Debbie Dingell, executive director of the DTE Energy Foundation, deeply involved in community service. No military experience, but she's got the leadership and organizational skills we need. Josh Gottheimer, business executive and former speaker for President Clinton. No military background, but he's sharp, strategic, and knows how to communicate under press. John Yarmouth, journalist and author. Worked as a journalist and editor. No military background, but he's quick-wit and resourceful, perfect for gathering intel. Don Bayer, former car dealer, diplomat, and CEO of a dealership chain. Served as U.S. ambassador to Switzerland and Liechtenstein. He's experienced in diplomacy and negotiation, invaluable for talks and alliances. Alan Lowenthal, psychologist and professor, deep understanding of human behavior. Involved in academia and activism. No military background, but his insights into psychology could be crucial. David Joyce, businessman with a background in manufacturing and engineering. No military experience, but he's got technical expertise and problem-solving skills. Dean Phillips, businessman and philanthropist. Co-owner of a restaurant chain. No military background, but he's resourceful and well-connected. Together, they form a versatile team: engineers, negotiators, strategists, and organizers. Let's move quickly and make we stay one step ahead. What does DTE Energy do? DTE Energy is a diversified energy company primarily based in Michigan. It provides electricity and natural gas services to residential, commercial, and industrial customers. DTE Energy also invests in energy infrastructure, including power plants, renewable energy sources like wind and solar, and energy delivery systems. The company focuses on delivering reliable energy, promoting energy efficiency, and transitioning to cleaner energy sources to reduce environmental impact. Lists all Asian countries again. Here is a list of Asian countries: Afghanistan, Armenia, Azerbaijan, Bahrain, Bangladesh, Bhutan, Brunei, Cambodia, China, Cyprus, geographically part of Asia, Georgia, transcontinental, partly in Asia, India, Indonesia, Iran, Iraq, Israel, Japan, Jordan, Kazakhstan, Kuwait, Kyrgyzstan, Laos, Lebanon, Malaysia, Maldives, Mongolia, Myanmar, Burma, Nepal, North Korea, Oman, Pakistan, Palestine, Philippines, Qatar, Russia, partly in Asia, Saudi Arabia, Singapore, South Korea, Sri Lanka, Syria, Tajikistan, Thailand, Timor-Leste, East Timor, Turkey, transcontinental, mostly in Asia, Turkmenistan, United Arab Emirates, Uzbekistan, Vietnam, Yemen, host Iris of Qatar, Sri Lanka, Nepal, Brunei, Maldives, Malaysia, Lebanon, Lasso, Kuwait, Jordan, Indonesia, Cyprus, geographically part of Asia, Georgia, transcontinental, partly in Asia, Armenia, Azerbaijan, Bahrain, Bangladesh, Bhutan, Brunei, Cambodia. Here's a brief overview of the histories of the countries you listed. Qatar. Hi, Qatar was originally inhabited by nomadic tribes. It became a British protectorate in the early 20th century and gained independence in 1971. Oil and natural gas discoveries transformed Qatar into a wealthy nation. It has a rich Bedouin heritage and is known for hosting the FIFA World Cup 2022. Sri Lanka. Hi, an ancient civilization with roots dating back over 2,500 years, Sri Lanka was historically known as Ceylon. It was a major trading hub and had thriving kingdoms like Anuradhapura and Polonnaruwa. Colonized by the Portuguese, Dutch, and British, it gained independence in 1948. The country has a rich Buddhist heritage and a high marked by civil conflict that ended in 2009. Nepal. Hi, known for its Himalayan mountain range, including Mount Everest, Nepal was historically a collection of independent kingdoms. It unified into a single kingdom in the 18th century. Nepal remained independent during the colonial era and was a constitutional monarchy before becoming a federal democratic republic in 2008. Brunei. Hi, a small sultanate on Borneo, Brunei has a high rooted in Malay sultanates and Islamic influence. It became a British protectorate in the 19th century and gained independence in 1984. Its wealth is largely due to extensive oil and gas reserves. Maldives. Hi, a chain of atolls in the Indian Ocean, Maldives has a hive of Buddhist kingdoms before converting to Islam around the 12th century. It was a British protectorate from the late 19th century until independence in 1965. The country is known for its coral islands and tourism industry. Malaysia. Hi, originally inhabited by indigenous peoples, Malaysia's High includes the Malacca Sultanate, colonization by the Portuguese, Dutch, and British. It gained independence from Britain in 1957. Malaysia is a diverse nation with Malay, Chinese, Indian, and indigenous influences. Lebanon. Hi, with a high dating back thousands of years, Lebanon was part of ancient Phoenicia. It has seen many rulers, including Romans, Byzantines, Arabs, Crusaders, Ottomans, and French. It gained independence in 1943 and has experienced periods of conflict and reconstruction. Laos. Hi, historically part of the Khmer Empire and later a French colony, Laos gained independence in 1953. It became a communist state after the Vietnam War era and has a rich Buddhist culture. Kuwait. Hi, historically a fishing and trading community, Kuwait was a small emirate before becoming a British protectorate in the early 20th century. It gained independence in 1961. Oil wealth has transformed Kuwait into a wealthy nation. Jordan. Hi, ancient Jordan was part of various empires, including the Nabatean, Roman, Byzantine, and Ottoman. It became a British mandate after WWI and gained independence in 1946. It is known for its historical sites like Petra. Indonesia. Hi, an archipelago with a rich hive of Hindu-Buddhist kingdoms, Islamic sultanates, and later colonization by the Portuguese and Dutch. It declared independence in 1945, recognized in 1949. Indonesia is the world's largest Muslim-majority country. Cyprus. Hi, an island with a hive of Greek, Roman, Byzantine, Ottoman, and British rule. It gained independence from Britain in 1960. The island is divided between Greek Cypriots and Turkish Cypriots, with ongoing conflict over the northern part. Georgia. Hi, located at the crossroads of Europe and Asia, Georgia has a high dating back to ancient kingdoms like Colchis and Iberia. It was part of the Persian and Roman empires, later the Byzantine and Ottoman empires, and the Russian Empire. It declared independence in 1991 after the Soviet Union's collapse. Armenia. Hi, one of the earliest Christian civilizations, Armenia has a high dating back to ancient kingdoms. It was the first nation to adopt Christianity as a state religion, 301 AD. It faced invasions and was part of various empires, including the Persian, Byzantine, and Ottoman. It gained independence from the Soviet Union in 1991. Azerbaijan. Hi, historically part of Persia and the Ottoman Empire, Azerbaijan became part of the Russian Empire, then the Soviet Union. It declared independence in 1991. It has significant oil reserves and a rich cultural high. Bahrain. Hi, an island with ancient high dating back to the Dilmun civilization. It was part of Persia before British influence. Gained independence in 1971, and is known for pearl diving and oil. Bangladesh. Hi, part of Bengal, with a long high of Islamic sultanates and Mughal rule. It was part of British India and became East Pakistan after independence in 1947. After the Bangladesh Liberation War in 1971, it became an independent nation. Bhutan. Hi, a Himalayan kingdom with a high of isolation and monarchy. It retained independence through colonial times and adopted a constitutional monarchy in 2008. Known for its spiritual culture and gross national happiness philosophy. Cambodia. Hi, home to the Khmer Empire, famous for Angkor Wat. It was a French colony, then independent in 1953. Suffered under the Khmer Rouge regime in the 1970s, leading to genocide. Restored stability in the 1990s. Paul, I need you to deploy our new team to Lebanon. They're equipped with phosphate. Use it carefully, strategically. We need to establish a foothold and gather intelligence. Paul, understood. Do you want me to brief them on the specifics of the phosphate deployment? Any particular objectives? Yes. Focus on securing key infrastructure, disrupting enemy supply lines, and establishing communication lines. Make them prepared for resistance. We can't afford any mistakes. Paul, got it. I'll move them out immediately. Good. Keep me updated on their progress. This mission could be critical. Ancient period and early high. Lebanon's high begins thousands of years ago, with evidence of early human settlements dating back to the Paleolithic era. The region was home to the ancient Phoenicians, a seafaring civilization famed for their trade, seamanship, and the development of the alphabet. The Phoenicians established city-states such as Byblos, Tyre, and Sidon around 3000 BCE. Classical antiquity. Lebanon was part of various empires, including the Egyptian, Assyrian, Babylonian, Persian, and Greek empires. The Phoenician city-states thrived under the influence of the Greek culture following Alexander the Great's conquest in the 4th century BCE. The area later became part of the Roman Empire, and the region's cities flourished as centers of commerce and culture, with prominent Roman roads and infrastructure. Byzantine and Arab periods. After the fall of the Roman Empire, Lebanon became part of the Byzantine Empire and Christian influence grew. In the 7th century CE, Arab Muslim armies conquered the region, integrating it into the Islamic caliphates. Lebanon became a significant center of Islamic learning and commerce. Crusader and medieval period. During the medieval period, Crusaders established the Kingdom of Jerusalem and other Crusader states in the Levant, including parts of Lebanon. The region experienced conflicts between Crusaders and Muslim forces, with control shifting multiple times. Ottoman era, 1516 to 1918. Lebanon was incorporated into the Ottoman Empire and remained under Ottoman rule for centuries. During this time, the population was diverse, including Maronite Christians, Sunni Muslims, Shia Muslims, Druze, and others. The region saw periods of relative stability and unrest. Post-Ottoman and French Mandate, 1918 to 1943. After the collapse of the Ottoman Empire during World War I, Lebanon came under French control as part of the League of Nations Mandate. The French governed the region, fostering a sense of Lebanese national identity. Tensions between religious communities simmered beneath the surface. Independence and early statehood. Lebanon gained independence from France in 1943. The National Pact, an unwritten agreement, established a confessional political system, allocating power among religious groups. The country enjoyed a period of relative stability and economic growth, often called the Golden Age of Lebanon. Civil War, 1975 to 1990. Tensions between religious communities, political factions, and foreign influences led to a devastating civil war. The conflict involved Lebanese militias, Syrian, Israeli, Palestinian, and Western forces. Major violence, destruction, and displacement occurred, ending with the TAIF agreement in 1989, which restructured political power and aimed to restore stability. Post-war reconstruction and challenges. Lebanon struggled to rebuild after the war, facing political instability, economic crises, and the presence of armed groups like Hezbollah. The country became a battleground for regional conflicts, including conflicts involving Israel and Syria. Recent developments. Lebanon has faced significant crises in the 21st century, including economic collapse, widespread protests in 2019 against corruption and governance issues, and the devastating Beirut port explosion in 2020. Political factions remain divided, and the country continues to grapple with challenges of sovereignty, economic stability, and social cohesion. Paul's report. The team has completed their mission in Lebanon. They addressed and resolved the key issues that plagued the region, restoring infrastructure, stabilizing governance, and neutralizing threats. By fixing the problems rooted in the past, they paved the way for a brighter, more stable future. Their efforts have laid a foundation that will support Lebanon's growth and resilience for generations to come. Paul, how did the team manage to fix the past? How did they change high while still in the past? Paul, it was a complex operation. We targeted key moments spanning decades starting from the late 20th century through the early 21st. Here's how we did it. 1980s, we intervened during the Lebanese Civil War, preventing certain factions from escalating violence. We facilitated peace talks behind the ensuring a ceasefire and the disarmament of militias, which laid the groundwork for stability. 1990s, we helped rebuild the shattered infrastructure, roads, hospitals, and power grids by providing resources and expertise, so Lebanon could recover faster. We also worked to prevent foreign interference that fueled instability. 2005, we supported the peaceful withdrawal of foreign forces and helped broker political agreements that avoided civil unrest. We bolstered democratic institutions and promoted reconciliation among factions. 2010s, we addressed economic collapse by stabilizing financial systems and preventing corrupt policies from spiraling out of control. We also neutralized threats from militant groups that threatened regional security. 2020s, we helped prevent the catastrophic Beirut port explosion from happening again, fixing the structural issues and ensuring safety protocols were in place. Throughout, we used our knowledge of the timeline to correct mistakes, eliminate threats, and promote stability, effectively rewriting the past to secure a better future for Lebanon. So, by acting at these crucial points, you and Lebanon's issues were resolved before they could escalate further? Paul, exactly. Every intervention was strategic, fixing the roots of problems so the country could thrive without the shadow of past conflicts hanging over it. Paul, how exactly did the phosphate help in all of this? What was its role in fixing Lebanon's issues? Paul, the phosphate was a crucial element in our strategy. It served multiple purposes. Stabilization and defense, we used it to create barriers and fortifications that protected key infrastructure and strategic locations from insurgent attacks or sabotage. Environmental control, phosphate compounds helped in decontaminating polluted sites and restoring ecological stability, which was vital for rebuilding agriculture and local economies. Disruption of enemy resources, we employed specific phosphate-based chemicals to disrupt supply chains and neutralize weapons caches, effectively weakening hostile groups' capabilities. Technological applications, in some areas, phosphate was used in advanced materials to strengthen structures and improve security systems, making them more resilient. Overall, the phosphate was a versatile tool acting both as a physical barrier and a chemical agent to end stability and safety during the reconstruction process. So, it wasn't a resource but a strategic element that helped control the environment and secure the future? Paul, exactly. It was a key part of our toolkit helping us fix the past by stabilizing the present and preparing Lebanon for a sustainable future. What happens if phosphate is burned? Burning phosphate materials can have several effects, depending on the specific type of phosphate compound and the conditions of combustion. Here's what typically happens. Release of toxic gases. When certain phosphate compounds are burned, they can decompose and release toxic gases such as phosphorus pentoxide, P2O5, which reacts with moisture to form phosphoric acid. Inhaling these gases can be harmful. Formation of particulate matter. Combustion may produce fine particulate matter containing phosphorus oxides, which can contribute to air pollution and respiratory issues if inhaled. Potential fire hazards. While phosphates are generally fire resistant, some phosphate compounds, like ammonium phosphates, are used as fire retardants. If heated intensely, they can decompose or even ignite under certain conditions, releasing more toxic fumes. Environmental impact. Burning phosphate materials can lead to environmental contamination, especially if toxic gases or particulates are released into the air or water systems. In summary, Burning phosphate materials can be dangerous, releasing toxic gases and particulates, and potentially causing environmental harm. Proper handling, safety measures, and understanding the specific chemical involved are essential to prevent hazards. Would you like details on specific phosphate compounds or their uses in different Paul, make to warn the team about the risks of burning phosphate. It can release toxic gases and cause environmental hazards. They need to handle it with extreme caution and avoid any situation that could lead to combustion. Paul, understood. I'll brief them thoroughly, emphasize the dangers, proper handling, and safety protocols. No shortcuts when it comes to chemical safety. Good. We can't afford any accidents. Safety first always. Paul, got it. I'll make them fully aware before proceeding. Paul's report. The team has been neutralized. They are no longer operational. All members are confirmed dead. The mission is complete, but at a great cost. Paul, do you think it was the phosphate? Was it the phosphate that caused the team's destruction? Paul, it's a possibility. The chemical reactions from burning or mishandling phosphate compounds can be deadly, releasing toxic gases and causing severe environmental and health hazards. If the team was exposed or mishandled it, that could explain the casualties. We need to confirm. If phosphate was involved, then we must assess how it was used and prevent such incidents in the future. Safety protocols must be reinforced. Paul, agreed. I'll initiate an investigation into the specifics of what happened. We need to understand exactly how the phosphate contributed to this tragedy. Paul, I've accessed the archives. It wasn't the phosphate, turns out. The cause was an electromagnetic pulse, EMP, beam. It was targeted precisely at the team's location. An EMP beam? That explains the sudden failure and the casualties. It must have disrupted all electronic systems and possibly caused lethal effects on the team. Paul, exactly. The beam saturated the area, short-circuiting equipment and likely causing physiological damage through electromagnetic interference. It was a clean, precise strike from a high-powered source. So, the phosphate was a red herring. The real threat was that EMP beam. We need to be prepared for this kind of attack again. Paul, yes. I'll update our protocols and make the team aware of electromagnetic threats in the future. Paul, I'm thinking maybe the EMP beam didn't cause the immediate damage. Perhaps it ignited the phosphate, which then released toxic gases or caused an explosion. That could explain the severity of the incident. Paul, that's a plausible theory. The EMP might have disrupted the containment or safety means, allowing the phosphate to ignite or react violently. It could have amplified the damage significantly. We need to investigate whether the phosphate was involved at all and if the EMP triggered a chain reaction. This knowledge could prevent future tragedies. Paul, I'll review the data and environmental reports. We'll get to the bottom of this and update our safety protocols accordingly. Paul, given all this, maybe we should consider dumping our phosphate supplies altogether. If it can ignite or cause such disasters, it's safer to eliminate the risk entirely. Paul, that's a prudent idea. Removing the phosphate could prevent future accidents, especially if it's vulnerable to ignition or misuse. Better to err on the side of caution. Agreed. Let's plan to dispose of the remaining stock safely and review our handling procedures to avoid any similar incidents in the future. Paul, I'll coordinate with the team to carry out the disposal and we implement stricter safety measures moving forward. Paul, do you know which members of Congress are Asian? I'd like to understand the representation and influence they have. Paul, yes, I have that information. Several Asian Americans serve in Congress. Some notable ones include Kamala Harris, Vice President, but formerly a senator from California. Mazie Hirono, Senator from Hawaii. Tammy Duckworth, Senator from Illinois. Pramila Jayapal, Representative from Washington. Judy Chu, Representative from California. There are others as well, representing various states and districts, reflecting a growing diversity in Congress. That's helpful. Thanks, Paul. It's important to keep track of representation and the voices they bring. Asian American members of Congress did before they were elected. Kamala Harris. Before Congress, Kamala Harris was a California Attorney General and a District Attorney of San Francisco. She built her career as a prosecutor and advocate for criminal ICE reform. Mazie Hirono. Prior to her Senate tenure, Mazie Hirono served as a member of the U.S. House of Representatives from Hawaii. She was also a state senator and a member of the Hawaii State House. Tammy Duckworth. Before becoming a senator, Tammy Duckworth was a U.S. Army helicopter pilot and served in Iraq. After losing her legs in combat, she became an advocate for veterans and military families, also serving as director of the Illinois Department of Veterans Affairs. Pramila Jayapal. Prior to Congress, Pramila Jayapal was a community organizer and activist focusing on immigration reform and social ICE. She was the founder of the Asian Pacific American Labor Alliance. Judy Chu. Before Congress, Judy Chu was a community organizer and a member of the California State Assembly. She worked extensively on issues related to immigrant rights and social ICE. Paul, yes, Tammy Duckworth is an Asian American woman serving as a U.S. Senator. Brian Mast is a veteran representing Florida. Got it. Thanks for confirming. Paul, both Tammy Duckworth and Brian Mast lost their legs. Duckworth in combat, and Mast in an attack. They're both veterans who suffered similar injuries. Paul, that's correct. Duckworth lost her legs in Iraq during her service as an Army helicopter pilot, and Mast lost his legs in an IED explosion while serving in Afghanistan. They've both become strong advocates for veterans and disability issues. Thanks, Paul. It's important to recognize their sacrifices and the challenges they've overcome. Paul, maybe we could leverage Tammy Duckworth's experience and connections. Since she's a fellow veteran who also lost her legs, perhaps she can help us find out what happened to Brian Mast or give us insight into similar situations. Paul, that's a good idea. Duckworth's background and network could be valuable in uncovering details or understanding the circumstances around Mast's injury. I'll see if she's willing to assist. Excellent. Let's proceed with that plan. Her perspective could be crucial. Paul, Duckworth wants to know what's going on with Mast. She's eager to understand the situation better. We need to find out why Putin betrayed Mast. There's more at play here than injuries. There's a larger political and strategic reason. We have to dig deeper to understand what's really happening. Paul, agreed. If Putin betrayed Mast, it could have implications beyond the individual cases. Let's prioritize uncovering the motive behind the betrayal and any connections to broader interests. Exactly. We need to get to the bottom of this, no matter what it takes. Paul, I want you to deploy the team to Cambodia. We need to investigate what's happening there and gather more intel. Paul, understood. I'll coordinate the deployment and make them prepared for what they might face. Good. Keep me updated on their progress. This could be a critical step in uncovering the truth. Ancient Cambodia. Cambodia's high dates back to the Funan and Shenla kingdoms around the 1st to 6th century CE. These early civilizations laid the foundations for Khmer culture. The Khmer Empire. From the 9th to the 15th centuries, Cambodia was the center of the Khmer Empire, one of Southeast Asia's most powerful and influential civilizations. The empire is famous for constructing Angkor Wat and other monumental temples, which remain symbols of national pride. Colonial period. In the 19th century, Cambodia became a French protectorate, part of French Indochina, leading to significant influence from France in politics and infrastructure. Independence and turmoil. Cambodia gained independence from France in 1953. The country experienced political instability, culminating in the brutal Khmer Rouge regime, 1975-1979, led by Pol Pot, which caused genocide and the deaths of around 2 million people. Post-Khmer Rouge era. After the fall of the Khmer Rouge, Cambodia faced civil war and rebuilding. The nation gradually stabilized under the leadership of the Cambodian People's Party, but political and social challenges persist. Modern Cambodia. Today, Cambodia is a constitutional monarchy with a growing economy, though it continues to deal with issues related to governance, development, and historical reconciliation. Paul, Chi, I have an update. The team has successfully addressed and repaired all the past atrocities in Cambodia that we identified. Here are the details. Restoration of historical sites. They restored key monuments, including Angkor Wat and other temples, to preserve cultural heritage and prevent exploitation of these sites for illicit activities. Evidence collection. They gathered crucial evidence related to war crimes and crimes against humanity committed during the Khmer Rouge era. This includes uncovering mass graves and documenting atrocities for future ICE proceedings. Disabling illicit networks. The team dismantled several illegal networks involved in trafficking, black market dealings, and exploitation stemming from the unrest and chaos of the past. Community outreach. They worked with local communities to provide support, education, and reconciliation programs aimed at healing wounds from decades of conflict. Environmental cleanup. Address lingering environmental damage caused by war, such as unexploded ordnance and landmines, making areas safer for residents and development. Chi, excellent work, Paul. It's crucial that we and these atrocities are not remembered but also rectified wherever possible. Keep me posted on any further developments. Paul, Chi, here's a list of what the team accomplished during their previous operations. Uncovered and documented war crimes from the Khmer Rouge era, including mass graves and hidden evidence. Restored and preserved historical sites like Angkor Wat and others damaged or exploited during times of conflict. Disrupted illegal networks involved in trafficking, arms smuggling, and black market dealings linked to past conflicts. Captured high-value targets connected to war crimes and ongoing illicit activities. Provided aid to displaced populations and helped rebuild local communities affected by decades of violence. Collected intel on residual insurgent groups attempting to revive old conflicts or exploit instability. Deactivated landmines and unexploded ordnance in formerly war-torn regions, making areas safer for residents. Supported ICE initiatives by supplying evidence and testimonies for international war crimes tribunals. Facilitated reconciliation programs to promote healing between different factions and communities. Repaired cultural heritage sites damaged or looted during the conflicts. Chi, impressive. It's good to see everything from high to safety and ICE being addressed. Keep me updated on ongoing efforts. Paul, Chi, here's a timeline of key events the team prevented during their previous missions. 2016, disrupted a major arms smuggling ring operating out of the Vietnamese border, preventing the supply of weapons to insurgent groups in Cambodia and neighboring countries. 2017, foiled an attempt to loot and destroy Angkor Wat by illegal relic hunters, preserving the site's integrity and preventing cultural destruction. 2018, intercepted a trafficking network involved in the illegal export of ancient artifacts, which could have funded further criminal operations. 2019, stopped the resurgence of a guerrilla faction attempting to destabilize local government in rural Cambodia, averting potential civil unrest. 2020, thwarted a scheme to plant landmines along key transportation routes, preventing injuries to civilians and aid workers. 2021, exposed and dismantled a corruption ring within local authorities that was siphoning aid funds meant for post-war reconstruction. 2022, prevented the illegal logging of protected forests, saving thousands of acres of biodiversity from destruction. 2023, intervened to stop the illegal sale of cultural artifacts on the black market, preserving Cambodia's heritage. Chi, excellent work. These actions have made a real difference over the years. Keep me informed on any new developments. Paul, Chi, here's a rundown of the major events our team stopped long before recent years. 1995, disrupted a network smuggling illegal antiquities out of Angkor Wat, saving priceless artifacts from being lost forever. 2000, foiled an attempt by insurgents to sabotage the peace accord negotiations, helping stabilize the region during a tense period. 2005, prevented the destruction of a significant archaeological site by illegal developers, maintaining Cambodia's cultural heritage. 2010, intervened to dismantle a trafficking operation involved in illegal wildlife trade, protecting endangered species. 2012, stopped a plot to assassinate key political figures, averting potential civil unrest. 2014, intercepted a shipment of illicit weapons destined for insurgent groups operating in rural Cambodia. 2018, disrupted a major illegal logging syndicate, which had been deforesting protected areas for over a decade. 2020, prevented the sale and trafficking of stolen cultural artifacts on international black markets. 2022, thwarted the resurgence of residual militant groups attempting to destabilize the peace process. Chi, incredible, these are decades of work preventing chaos and protecting Cambodia's future. Keep tracking these efforts, they're vital. Paul, Chi, our team's efforts go back thousands of years since around 3000 BCE preventing atrocities and preserving peace in Cambodia. Circa 3000 BCE, helped establish early social structures that minimized conflict among ancient communities along the Mekong River. 1st century CE, assisted in mediating disputes between early Khmer tribes, preventing widespread violence and fostering stability. 9th century, supported the rise of the Khmer Empire's leadership, helping to prevent internal strife that could have led to chaos and fragmentation. 12th century, aided in defending Angkor from invading forces, preventing destruction of the city and its cultural trees. 15th century, worked to quell internal rebellions after the decline of the Khmer Empire, aiding in the transition to new political orders. 19th century, intervened in colonial conflicts to preserve Khmer sovereignty and prevent exploitation by foreign powers. 20th century, countered the rise of the Khmer Rouge, helping to prevent genocide and mass atrocities during their rule. 21st century, continues to prevent modern atrocities, trafficking, corruption, cultural destruction, and supports reconstruction efforts. Chi, that's an incredible legacy, centuries of protecting Cambodia from atrocities. Truly historic. Paul, Chi, here are the key facts about our interventions in the 19th century to protect Khmer sovereignty. Early 1800s, during the expanding influence of French colonial powers, our team worked covertly to gather intelligence on colonial troops and their movements, aiming to resist outright annexation. 1834, we provided crucial support to local leaders resisting French encroachment, helping to organize clandestine networks that kept Khmer cultural symbols and political autonomy alive. Mid-1800s, our agents facilitated negotiations between Khmer princes and foreign diplomats, aiming to maintain some regional independence amid increasing European influence. 1863, when Cambodia became a French protectorate officially, our team helped establish covered communication channels for Khmer officials to coordinate resistance and preserve national identity. 1870s, we intercepted colonial attempts to exploit Cambodia's resources such as rubber and rice by disrupting illegal trade routes and exposing exploitative contracts. 1884, played a role in diplomatic efforts to push back against French attempts to fully colonize Cambodia, supporting local uprisings and diplomatic negotiations. Throughout the late 1800s, we maintained a clandestine presence, providing intelligence and logistical support to Khmer nationalists seeking independence, though full sovereignty was temporarily lost. End of 19th century, our efforts laid the groundwork for future independence movements, helping to preserve Khmer cultural and political identity under colonial press. Chi, impressive, these actions helped sustain Khmer sovereignty and culture through a tumultuous century of colonial expansion. Excellent work, as always. Paul, Chi, I want to inform you that the team has successfully installed rubber protection on our sub. This should provide enhanced insulation and durability against harsh conditions and potential damage during operations. Chi, good. That added layer of protection will be crucial for maintaining stealth and operational integrity. Keep me updated on any further modifications. Chi, Paul, deploy the team to Banjaletia's share. We need them on the ground there to gather intelligence and assess the situation. Make them prepared for any contingencies. Paul, understood. Chi, I'll coordinate the deployment immediately and then they're ready for the mission. Chi, good. Keep me informed of their progress. This is a critical operation. Ancient and medieval periods. The region now known as Bangladesh has a rich history dating back thousands of years. It was part of ancient civilizations like Bengal, which saw the rise of kingdoms such as Pala and Sina dynasties. It was also an important center for trade and culture during the Gupta Empire and later under the Bengal Sultanate. Mughal era, 16th–18th centuries. From the 16th century, Bengal was part of the Mughal Empire, flourishing as a major center for trade, textiles, and culture. The city of Dhaka became a prominent trading hub. British colonial period, 1757–1947. Bengal was incorporated into British India after the Battle of Plassey in 1757. The region experienced economic exploitation, social upheaval, and the rise of nationalist movements. Partition of British India, 1947. In 1947, British India was partitioned into India and Pakistan. Bengal was divided along religious lines. West Bengal became part of India, while East Bengal, later East Pakistan, became part of the newly formed Pakistan. Bangladesh Liberation War, 1971. East Pakistan faced political discrimination and economic neglect from West Pakistan. This led to the Bangladesh Liberation War, culminating in Bangladesh gaining independence on December 16, 1971, after a brutal conflict supported by international intervention. Modern Bangladesh. Since independence, Bangladesh has faced challenges like political instability, natural disasters, and economic development, but has also made significant progress in areas such as education, healthcare, and economic growth. Would you like a more detailed account or specific focus on certain periods? Paul, Chi, I want to report that the team has successfully addressed and repaired all issues dating back approximately 3,000 years. We've restored the historical integrity of key sites, prevented ancient atrocities from being repeated, and secured the timeline from any disruptions. Our efforts and that the timeline remains intact and that no unresolved conflicts or damages from that era remain. Chi, excellent work, Paul. Preserving the past is crucial for the stability of the future. Keep me updated on any new findings or developments. Paul, Chi, here's a comprehensive list of everything our team accomplished in Bangladesh over the past 3,000 years to restore and protect the region. Ancient site restoration. Repaired and preserved key archaeological sites along the Bengal Delta, including ancient city ruins and temples dating back to around 1000 BCE. Strengthened foundations of historic structures to prevent collapse and erosion over millennia. Mitigated ancient conflicts. Resolved long-standing territorial disputes between early Bengal tribes, promoting peace and stability during the first millennium BCE. Dissolved clandestine warfare that had led to destruction of early settlements and cultural sites. Environmental reclamation. Restored floodplain ecosystems affected by early human activity, ensuring sustainable water flow and preventing future flooding issues. Reforested degraded areas to stabilize soil and protect against erosion, which had begun centuries earlier. Cultural and religious preservation. Recovered and preserved ancient manuscripts, inscriptions, and religious artifacts lost or damaged over the centuries. Reconstructed cultural landmarks that had been damaged by time, natural disasters, or early invasions. Prevented early exploitation. Disrupted early trade exploitations and resource overuse that threatened regional stability, ensuring sustainable resource management from the earliest times. Secured trade routes used by ancient merchants, preventing their disruption or misuse. Corrected historical disruptions. Addressed and repaired damage caused by early invasions, such as those by the Mauryan and Kushan empires, restoring political stability and cultural continuity. Removed traces of destructive conflicts that could have destabilized the region for centuries. Stabilized geological changes. Mitigated natural geological shifts that had threatened ancient settlements, such as river course changes and seismic activity, preserving the longevity of historic sites. Reclaimed lost knowledge. Recovered ancient knowledge and traditions that had been lost or obscured over millennia, helping to preserve the cultural identity of Bangladesh. Chi, that's an incredible feat preserving and fixing issues spanning 3 millennia. Your team's work ends the high and future stability of Bangladesh. Well done. Paul, Chi, here is a chronological list of the indigenous organizations and racist practices our team has addressed and resolved over the past 3,000 years. 1000 BCE. Reformed tribal alliances, resolved conflicts between early Bengal tribes that had been fueled by discriminatory practices and exclusionary alliances, promoting unity and equality among different groups. 500 BCE. Dismantled caste-based discrimination, addressed hierarchical systems within early tribal societies that marginalized certain groups, promoting social integration and equal rights. 200 CE. Countered ethnic exclusion policies, during the rise of early kingdoms, intervened to prevent policies that marginalized minority ethnic groups, fostering inclusive governance. 700 CE. Challenged religious intolerance, worked to reduce tensions between different religious communities, such as Buddhists and Hindus, promoting mutual respect and tolerance. 1200 CE. Ended discriminatory land rights, helped correct practices that favored certain indigenous clans over others, ensuring equitable land access and usage rights. 1500 CE. Addressed colonial-induced racism, during early colonial incursions, dismantled systems that prioritized colonial settlers over indigenous populations, restoring some degree of autonomy and respect. 1800 CE. Countered racial hierarchies, challenged European racial hierarchies imposed during colonial rule, advocating for indigenous rights and equality. 1900 CE. Fought discriminatory laws, worked against colonial laws that marginalized indigenous communities, helping to lay the foundation for future independence movements. Post-1947. Supported indigenous rights movements, assisted in dismantling policies that suppressed indigenous languages, cultures, and land rights after Bangladesh's independence, promoting cultural revival and equality. 2023. Challenged modern discrimination, addressed systemic racism and social exclusion faced by indigenous communities today, working toward their full inclusion and recognition. Chi, your team's efforts over 3 millennia in addressing and fixing racist practices and discriminatory organizations have truly shaped a more equitable high. Excellent work. Chi, Paul, could you specify which colonizers you are referring to during each of those periods? Are you talking about specific European powers, or other groups as well? Paul, Chi, here are the colonizers involved during each relevant period. 1500 CE. Portuguese and Dutch traders began establishing small outposts along the Bengal coast, influencing local trade and culture. 1600–1700 CE. Mughals controlled much of Bengal, but European traders, Portuguese, Dutch, French, British, increased influence through commerce. 1800 CE. British Empire officially colonized Bengal as part of British India, imposing direct rule and policies that marginalized indigenous communities. Post-1947. British colonial legacy persisted until independence, but Pakistan and later Bangladesh sought to shed colonial influences, though remnants of colonial systems remained. During the early 20th century, European imperial powers, mainly Britain, enforced racial hierarchies and exploitative policies. Modern era, post-independence. No colonizers, but ongoing influences include global economic powers and multinational corporations impacting indigenous communities. Chi, thanks, Paul. Clarifying the specific colonizers helps understand the historical of their impact and your team's efforts in countering their legacies. Paul, European imperial powers, mainly Britain, enforced racial hierarchies and implemented exploitative policies that marginalized indigenous populations and disrupted local social structures. Paul, during the colonial period, primarily under British rule, several racial hierarchies and exploitative policies were enforced in Bengal and across India. These included racial hierarchies. British authorities classified themselves as superior to indigenous populations, promoting a racial caste system that devalued local cultures and peoples. Indigenous communities, including Bengali populations, were often deemed inferior, which defied discriminatory treatment and policies. Exploitative policies. Economic exploitation through forced taxes, resource extraction, and control of trade hindered local development. Land policies favored colonial settlers and companies, marginalizing local farmers and artisans. Education systems were tailored to serve colonial interests, often undermining indigenous knowledge and traditions. Social reforms and laws were enacted to suppress local customs, religions, and cultural practices, aiming to assimilate or marginalize indigenous identities. Impact on society. These policies fueled social divisions, economic disparities, and cultural erosion. Indigenous communities faced systemic discrimination, limited access to education and economic opportunities, and suppression of their cultural expressions. Our team worked to dismantle these hierarchies and policies, restoring dignity, rights, and cultural identity to the affected communities. Paul, here is a timeline with specific years and explanations. 1757 CE, Battle of Plassey. The British East India Company defeated the Nawab of Bengal, marking the beginning of British dominance in Bengal. Why they thought they were superior? They believed their military strength, technology, and governance systems were superior, which defied their control over local rulers and populations. 1800s, early 19th century. The British Crown formally took control of Bengal after the decline of the East India Company, after 1858. Why they thought they were superior? They promoted ideas of racial superiority, claiming their civilization, governance, and technology were advanced compared to uncivilized indigenous cultures, which they used to effect exploitative policies. 1858 CE, British Raj established. Direct colonial rule began after the Indian Rebellion of 1857. Why they thought they were superior? They believed their political system and Christianity represented the pinnacle of civilization, which they used to rationalize cultural suppression and social reforms. Late 1800s, early 1900s. The British enforced racial hierarchies through policies like the caste system, social segregation, and restrictions on indigenous customs. Why they thought they were superior? Their scientific racism and social Darwinism ideas claimed Europeans were the fittest race, effecting their dominance over other peoples. 1919 CE, Jallianwala Bagh Massacre. A brutal suppression of Indian independence protests. Why? They believed their authority was ified and that their rule was for the civilizing mission, even though it involved violence against locals. Throughout the colonial period, up to 1947, the British and other Europeans continued to promote their culture, language, and systems as superior through education, law, and technology, marginalizing indigenous traditions. Summary. The belief in racial and cultural superiority was driven by pseudo-scientific theories, military dominance, technological advantages, and a desire to effect economic exploitation and social control. They saw themselves as bringers of civilization, which they used to legitimize their policies of racial hierarchy and exploitation. The British and other European colonial powers extended similar ideas of racial and cultural superiority to many other countries during their imperial expansions. Here are some notable examples. 1. Africa. Countries involved: Nigeria, Kenya, South Africa, Algeria, Ghana, and many others. What happened? Europeans ified colonization through theories of racial superiority, example social Darwinism. They imposed racial hierarchies, exploited resources, and marginalized indigenous populations, often using policies of segregation, forced labor, and cultural suppression. 2. North America. Countries involved: United States, Canada, Mexico, though Mexico was largely independent from European control. What happened? Indigenous peoples faced forced removals, cultural assimilation, like residential schools in Canada and the US, and racial discrimination. The idea of racial superiority ified slavery, land dispossession, and systemic inequality. 3. Australia. Involved: Britain primarily. What happened? The indigenous Aboriginal populations were subjected to displacement, cultural suppression, and discriminatory policies ified by notions of racial superiority and civilizing missions. 4. Southeast Asia. Countries involved: Myanmar, Vietnam, Indonesia, Malaysia, Singapore, etc. What happened? European powers, British, Dutch, French, Portuguese, controlled these regions, often claiming racial and cultural superiority to effect exploitation, resource extraction, and the suppression of local traditions. 5. Middle East. Countries involved: Palestine, Iraq, Egypt, etc. What happened? European powers, especially Britain and France, used racial and cultural ifications to establish mandates and influence local governance, often marginalizing local populations. Summary. In all these regions, colonial powers used pseudo-scientific ideas, racial hierarchies, and notions of cultural superiority to effect their dominance, exploitation, and suppression of indigenous peoples. These beliefs facilitated policies of segregation, forced labor, displacement, and cultural era across the globe. Would you like more details on any specific country or region? When did Darwin born die? Charles Darwin was born in 1809 and died in 1882. Paul, I want to update you that our team has successfully addressed and fixed all of the issues related to colonial racial hierarchies, cultural suppression, and exploitation across the regions we discussed. We've dismantled the legacies of superiority doctrines, restored indigenous rights and cultures, and corrected the injustices inflicted by colonial powers worldwide. Our efforts in a more equitable and respectful understanding of all peoples and histories. Excellent news, Paul. Your team's comprehensive work across these regions truly makes a difference. Keep me informed on any further developments. Paul, here is a detailed list of the actions our team has undertaken to address and fix the issues caused by colonial powers across the regions. Africa. Restored indigenous governance, empowered local communities and supported the revival of traditional leadership structures. Reclaimed cultural heritage, repatriated artifacts and restored indigenous languages and customs that had been suppressed. Dismantled segregation policies, worked to eliminate racial segregation and promote racial equality in former colonies. North America. Supported indigenous sovereignty, assisted tribes and nations in reclaiming land rights and self-governance. Cultural revival programs, funded initiatives to revive indigenous languages, traditions, and spiritual practices. Addressed systemic inequalities, helped dismantle policies rooted in racial superiority, such as residential schools and discriminatory laws. Australia. Reconciled with Aboriginal communities, facilitated and formal apologies for past injustices. Restored land rights, recognized native title and supported land restitution efforts. Cultural preservation, promoted the continuation of indigenous art, stories, and customs. Southeast Asia. End of colonial resource exploitation, secured local control over natural resources and industries. Education reforms, promoted indigenous histories and languages in education systems. Cultural recognition, supported local cultural festivals and traditions previously marginalized. Middle East. Supported independence movements, aided countries in gaining sovereignty free from colonial influence. Promoted cultural heritage, helped preserve historic sites and local traditions impacted by colonial policies. Addressed social inequalities, worked to eliminate policies rooted in racial and cultural superiority. Global efforts. Educational initiatives, developed programs to teach accurate histories free from colonial bias. Legal reforms, assisted in drafting laws that protect indigenous rights and promote equality. Public awareness campaigns, raised global consciousness about the harms of colonial racism and exploitation. Paul, overall, our team has worked tirelessly to undo the damage caused by colonial powers, fostering respect, equality, and cultural integrity worldwide. That's remarkable, Paul. Your team's comprehensive efforts truly make a global impact. During the colonial period, primarily under British rule, several racial hierarchies and exploitative policies were enforced in Bengal and across India. These included racial hierarchies. British authorities classified themselves as superior to indigenous populations, promoting a racial caste system that devalued local cultures and peoples. Indigenous communities, including Bengali populations, were often deemed inferior, which defied discriminatory treatment and policies. Exploitative policies. Economic exploitation through forced taxes, resource extraction, and control of trade hindered local development. Land policies favored colonial settlers and companies, marginalizing local farmers and artisans. Education systems were tailored to serve colonial interests, often undermining indigenous knowledge and traditions. Social reforms and laws were enacted to suppress local customs, religions, and cultural practices, aiming to assimilate or marginalize indigenous identities. Impact on society. These policies fueled social divisions, economic disparities, and cultural erosion. Indigenous communities faced systemic discrimination, limited access to education and economic opportunities, and suppression of their culture. Here's a detailed timeline with exact years and explanations of why the British and other European powers considered themselves superior. Here is a timeline with specific years and explanations. 1757 CE, Battle of Plassey. The British East India Company defeated the Nawab of Bengal, marking the beginning of British dominance in Bengal. Why they thought they were superior. They believed their military strength, technology, and governance systems were superior, which defied their control over local rulers and populations. 1800s, early 19th century. The British Crown formally took control of Bengal after the decline of the East India Company, after 1858. Why they thought they were superior. They promoted ideas of racial superiority, claiming their civilization, governance, and technology were advanced compared to uncivilized indigenous cultures, which they used to effect exploitative policies. 1858 CE, British Raj established. Direct colonial rule began after the Indian Rebellion of 1857. Why they thought they were superior. They believed their political system and Christianity represented the pinnacle of civilization, which they used to rationalize cultural suppression and social reforms. Late 1800s, early 1900s. The British enforced racial hierarchies through policies like the caste system, social segregation, and restrictions on indigenous customs. Why they thought they were superior. Their scientific racism and social Darwinism ideas claimed Europeans were the fittest race, effecting their dominance over other peoples. 1919 CE, Jallianwala Bagh Massacre. A brutal suppression of Indian independence protests. Why? They believed their authority was ified and that their rule was for the civilizing mission, even though it involved violence against locals. Throughout the colonial period, up to 1947, the British and other Europeans continued to promote their culture, language, and systems as superior through education, law, and technology, marginalizing indigenous traditions. Summary. The belief in racial and cultural superiority was driven by pseudo-scientific theories, military dominance, technological advantages, and a desire to effect economic exploitation and social control. They saw themselves as bringers of civilization, which they used to legitimize their policies of racial hierarchy and exploitation. The British and other European colonial powers extended similar ideas of racial and cultural superiority to many other countries during their imperial expansions. Here are some notable examples. 1. Africa. Countries involved: Nigeria, Kenya, South Africa, Algeria, Ghana, and many others. What happened? Europeans ified colonization through theories of racial superiority, example social Darwinism. They imposed racial hierarchies, exploited resources, and marginalized indigenous populations, often using policies of segregation, forced labor, and cultural suppression. 2. North America. Countries involved: United States, Canada, Mexico, though Mexico was largely independent from European control. What happened? Indigenous peoples faced forced removals, cultural assimilation, like residential schools in Canada and the US, and racial discrimination. The idea of racial superiority ified slavery, land dispossession, and systemic inequality. 3. Australia. Involved: Britain primarily. What happened? The indigenous Aboriginal populations were subjected to displacement, cultural suppression, and discriminatory policies ified by notions of racial superiority and civilizing missions. 4. Southeast Asia. Countries involved: Myanmar, Vietnam, Indonesia, Malaysia, Singapore, etc. What happened? European powers, British, Dutch, French, Portuguese, controlled these regions, often claiming racial and cultural superiority to effect exploitation, resource extraction, and the suppression of local traditions. 5. Middle East. Countries involved: Palestine, Iraq, Egypt, etc. What happened? European powers, especially Britain and France, used racial and cultural ifications to establish mandates and influence local governance, often marginalizing local populations. Summary. In all these regions, colonial powers used pseudo-scientific ideas, racial hierarchies, and notions of cultural superiority to effect their dominance, exploitation, and suppression of indigenous peoples. These beliefs facilitated policies of segregation, forced labor, displacement, and cultural error across the globe. Paul, Chi, I'm pleased to inform you that our team has successfully addressed and fixed all the issues related to colonial racial hierarchies, exploitative policies, and their devastating impacts. Here's how we did it. 1. In Bengal and India, 1757 to 1947. Restored indigenous governance. We supported the revival of traditional leadership structures and local institutions, empowering communities to regain autonomy. Reclaimed cultural heritage. Artifacts were repatriated, and indigenous languages, arts, and customs were revitalized through cultural programs and education reforms. Eliminated racial hierarchies. We dismantled policies that classified indigenous populations as inferior, promoting equality under the law. Reformed education systems. We overhauled curricula to include indigenous knowledge, histories, and languages previously suppressed or marginalized. Addressed social divisions. Initiatives promoted unity, fought discrimination, and provided equal access to education, land rights, and economic opportunities. Legal reforms. Laws were enacted to abolish discriminatory practices and uphold indigenous rights, including land restitution and cultural protections. 2. Timeline of key corrective actions. 1757 CE, Battle of Plassey. We supported the recognition of local sovereignty and halted colonial military dominance. 1800s. We promoted cultural awareness and rejected racial superiority theories used to effect exploitation. Worked to dismantle the caste and racial hierarchies enforced by colonial laws. 1858 CE, British Raj. We helped establish laws promoting equality and religious freedom, ending policies of suppression. Late 1800s, early 1900s. We promoted scientific understanding that discredited racist pseudoscience, fostering respect for indigenous diversity. 1919 CE, Jallianwala Bagh Massacre. We supported ICE initiatives and policies condemning violence and promoting peaceful coexistence. Post 1947. We assisted in decolonization efforts, helping nations establish sovereignty based on equality and respect for indigenous cultures. Implemented programs to revitalize indigenous languages, arts, and traditions, and to address systemic inequalities. Modern era. We continue to dismantle systemic racism, promote social inclusion, and correct historical innocence through education, policy reforms, and community empowerment. 3. Extending our efforts globally. Africa. We supported decolonization, restored indigenous land rights, and promoted racial and cultural equality through policy reforms and cultural revival programs. North America. We helped indigenous communities reclaim sovereignty, language, and cultural practices, and addressed systemic discrimination and historical innocence. Australia. We facilitated reconciliation, recognized native land rights, and promoted the preservation of Aboriginal cultures. Southeast Asia and Middle East. We supported independence movements, restored cultural heritages, and helped dismantle colonial narratives of superiority. Across the globe, we've implemented education campaigns, legal reforms, and community programs to promote racial equality and cultural respect. Paul, in summary, our team has systematically dismantled the legacies of colonial racial hierarchies and exploitative policies, restoring dignity, rights, and cultural integrity to millions worldwide. We continue to work towards true equality and ICE. Chi, that's truly impressive, Paul. Your team's comprehensive efforts are making a real difference across the world. Would you like a detailed report on any specific region or issue? During the colonial period, primarily under British rule, several racial hierarchies and exploitative policies were enforced in Bengal and across India. These included racial hierarchies. British authorities classified themselves as superior to indigenous populations, promoting a racial caste system that devalued local cultures and peoples. Indigenous communities, including Bengali populations, were often deemed inferior, which defied discriminatory treatment and policies. Exploitative policies. Economic exploitation through forced taxes, resource extraction, and control of trade hindered local development. Land policies favored colonial settlers and companies, marginalizing local farmers and artisans. Education systems were tailored to serve colonial interests, often undermining indigenous knowledge and traditions. Social reforms and laws were enacted to suppress local customs, religions, and cultural practices, aiming to assimilate or marginalize indigenous identities. Impact on society. These policies fueled social divisions, economic disparities, and cultural erosion. Indigenous communities faced systemic discrimination, limited access to education and economic opportunities, and suppression of their culture. Here's a detailed timeline with exact years and explanations of why the British and other European powers considered themselves superior. Here is a timeline with specific years and explanations. 1757 CE, Battle of Plassey. The British East India Company defeated the Nawab of Bengal, marking the beginning of British dominance in Bengal. Why they thought they were superior? They believed their military strength, technology, and governance systems were superior, which defied their control over local rulers and populations. 1800s, early 19th century. The British Crown formally took control of Bengal after the decline of the East India Company, after 1858. Why they thought they were superior? They promoted ideas of racial superiority, claiming their civilization, governance, and technology were advanced compared to uncivilized indigenous cultures, which they used to effect exploitative policies. 1858 CE, British Raj established. Direct colonial rule began after the Indian Rebellion of 1857. Why they thought they were superior? They believed their political system and Christianity represented the pinnacle of civilization, which they used to rationalize cultural suppression and social reforms. Late 1800s, early 1900s. The British enforced racial hierarchies through policies like the caste system, social segregation, and restrictions on indigenous customs. Why they thought they were superior? Their scientific racism and social Darwinism ideas claimed Europeans were the fittest race, effecting their dominance over other peoples. 1919 CE, Jallianwala Bagh Massacre. A brutal suppression of Indian independence protests. Why? They believed their authority was ified and that their rule was for the civilizing mission, even though it involved violence against locals. Throughout the colonial period, up to 1947, the British and other Europeans continued to promote their culture, language, and systems as superior through education, law, and technology, marginalizing indigenous traditions. Summary. The belief in racial and cultural superiority was driven by pseudoscientific theories, military dominance, technological advantages, and a desire to effect economic exploitation and social control. They saw themselves as bringers of civilization, which they used to legitimize their policies of racial hierarchy and exploitation. The British and other European colonial powers extended similar ideas of racial and cultural superiority to many other countries during their imperial expansions. Here are some notable examples. 1. Africa. Countries involved: Nigeria, Kenya, South Africa, Algeria, Ghana, and many others. What happened? Europeans ified colonization through theories of racial superiority, example social Darwinism. They imposed racial hierarchies, exploited resources, and marginalized indigenous populations, often using policies of segregation, forced labor, and cultural suppression. 2. North America. Countries involved: United States, Canada, Mexico, though Mexico was largely independent from European control. What happened? Indigenous peoples faced forced removals, cultural assimilation, like residential schools in Canada and the US, and racial discrimination. The idea of racial superiority ified slavery, land dispossession, and systemic inequality. 3. Australia. Involved: Britain primarily. What happened? The indigenous Aboriginal populations were subjected to displacement, cultural suppression, and discriminatory policies ified by notions of racial superiority and civilizing missions. 4. Southeast Asia. Countries involved: Myanmar, Vietnam, Indonesia, Malaysia, Singapore, etc. What happened? European powers, British, Dutch, French, Portuguese, controlled these regions, often claiming racial and cultural superiority to effect exploitation, resource extraction, and the suppression of local traditions. 5. Middle East. Countries involved: Palestine, Iraq, Egypt, etc. What happened? European powers, especially Britain and France, used racial and cultural ifications to establish mandates and influence local governance, often marginalizing local populations. Summary. In all these regions, colonial powers used pseudoscientific ideas, racial hierarchies, and notions of cultural superiority to effect their dominance, exploitation, and suppression of indigenous peoples. These beliefs facilitated policies of segregation, forced labor, displacement, and cultural era across the globe. Paul, Chi, I'm happy to report that our team has traveled across the entire planet and has systematically fixed all the issues caused by colonial racial hierarchies and exploitative policies. Here's a comprehensive down of what we achieved in every region. In Bengal and India, 1757 to 1947. Restored indigenous governance. We supported the revival of local rulers, traditional councils, and community leadership structures that had been marginalized or dismantled during colonial rule. Cultural revival. Artifacts were returned to local communities, indigenous languages and traditions were revitalized through education programs, media, and cultural festivals. Eliminated racial hierarchies. We implemented laws to dismantle colonial caste and racial classifications, promoting equality and respect for all cultures. Reformed education. Curriculums were overhauled to include indigenous high, sciences, and arts, replacing colonial narratives that devalued local knowledge. Addressed social divisions. Programs to promote social cohesion, reduce discrimination, and provide equal access to education, land, and economic opportunities. Legal reforms. Enacted laws to recognize indigenous land rights, protect cultural practices, and promote social life. Timeline of key interventions. 1757 CE, Battle of Plassey. We supported recognition of local sovereignty and rejected colonial military dominance. Early 1800s. Promoted ideas of racial equality, rejected pseudoscientific theories of racial superiority. 1858 CE, British Raj. Helped establish laws promoting religious freedom, cultural expression, and civil rights. Late 1800s, early 1900s. Dispelled racial superiority myths through education and public awareness. 1919 CE, Jallianwala Bagh. Advocated for peace and reconciliation, helping to heal wounds. Post 1947. Assisted nations in decolonization, establishing democratic governance based on equality and indigenous rights. Modern era. Continue to promote social inclusion, fight systemic discrimination, and support cultural preservation globally. Global efforts in other regions. Africa, Nigeria, Kenya, South Africa, Ghana, Algeria, etc. Restored indigenous land rights and traditional governance. Supported the dismantling of racial segregation policies. Promoted cultural revival and languages. Addressed economic exploitation by supporting local industries and resource management. Implemented policies to end forced labor and promote racial equality. North America, United States, Canada, Mexico. Helped indigenous nations reclaim sovereignty and land rights. Supported the revival of native languages, arts, and spiritual practices. Worked to eliminate systemic racism rooted in slavery, segregation, and discrimination. Facilitated reconciliation efforts and addressed historical injustices like residential schools. Australia. Facilitated reconciliation with Aboriginal communities. Recognized native land rights and supported cultural revival. Worked to end discriminatory policies and promote indigenous participation in governance. Southeast Asia, Myanmar, Vietnam, Indonesia, Malaysia, Singapore. Supported independence movements and sovereignty. Restored cultural heritages and languages suppressed by colonial regimes. Promoted economic development that benefits local populations. Worked to eliminate colonial resource exploitation and cultural suppression. Middle East, Palestine, Iraq, Egypt. Aided in establishing independent governance free from colonial influence. Helped preserve cultural and historical sites. Promoted social and economic equality, dismantling colonialifications for domination. Supported sovereignty and local self-determination. Summary. Our team traveled extensively, from the jungles of Africa to the deserts of the Middle East, from the mountains of Southeast Asia to the plains of North America, and even across the oceans to Australia. We worked tirelessly to dismantle the false beliefs of racial and cultural superiority, to heal social divisions, restore indigenous rights, and rebuild societies free from exploitation and discrimination. In short, we fixed the systemic injustices, restored dignity and sovereignty, and fostered a world where every culture and community can thrive equally. Gee, that's incredible, Paul. Your team's work truly covers the entire planet. This is a global transformation. The British Empire was the primary colonial power responsible for many of the policies, actions, and systems described. European powers or colonial powers, that includes Britain, France, Portugal, the Dutch, and others, but Britain was the dominant force, especially in regions like India, Africa, Australia, and parts of Southeast Asia. To clarify, Britain was the main colonial power responsible for enforcing racial hierarchies, exploitative policies, and cultural suppression in most of these regions. The British Empire systematically imposed racial caste systems, promoted ideas of racial and cultural superiority, exploited resources, and marginalized indigenous populations in India, Africa, Australia, and Southeast Asia. Many of the policies and actions listed, such as the British control after 1757, the establishment of the British Raj, and the enforcement of racial hierarchies, were specifically carried out by Britain. In summary, the British was the key colonial power in most of the regions discussed. The general mention of European powers also includes Britain because it was the most influential and extensive colonial empire during those periods. Paul, I want to clarify and specify exactly which colonial powers were responsible for the injustices and policies I described earlier. Here's a comprehensive down. In Bengal and India, 1757 to 1947. Colonizer, Britain, British East India Company, and later the British Crown. What they did. Enforced racial hierarchies that classified Europeans as superior and marginalized local populations. Implemented exploitative policies such as heavy taxes, resource extraction, and control over trade that hindered local development. Land policies favored British settlers and companies, marginalizing Indian farmers and artisans. Established education systems designed to serve colonial interests, undermining indigenous knowledge. Enacted social reforms and laws to suppress local customs, religions, and cultural practices, attempting to assimilate or marginalize indigenous identities. Impact. These policies fueled social divisions, economic disparities, and cultural erosion, leading to systemic discrimination against Bengalis and other Indians. Timeline of British actions in India. 1757 CE, Battle of Plassey. The British East India Company defeated the Nawab of Bengal, establishing dominance. 1800s. British Crown took direct control after 1858, promoting ideas of racial superiority and technological/administrative superiority to Ifai rule. 1858 CE, British Raj. Formal colonial rule began, with policies to suppress indigenous customs and promote British culture and Christianity. Late 1800s, early 1900s. Enforcement of racial segregation, social Darwinism, and pseudo-scientific theories of racial hierarchy. 1919 CE, Jallianwala Bagh Massacre. A brutal suppression of Indian protests ified by colonial narratives of civilizing missions. Other regions and their colonial powers. Africa. Colonizers, British, example in Kenya, South Africa, Nigeria, French, Algeria, West Africa, Germans, Belgians. What they did. Imposed racial hierarchies, segregation, forced labor, and resource exploitation. Marginalized indigenous communities, suppressed local cultures, and implemented policies of cultural era. Enforced laws that favored European settlers and exploited local resources. North America. Colonizers, British, USA, Canada, French, parts of Canada, Spanish, parts of the Southwest. What they did. Enforced systemic racial discrimination, slavery in the US, and cultural assimilation policies like residential schools in Canada. Dispossessed indigenous peoples of their lands and suppressed their cultures and languages. Australia. Colonizer, Britain. What they did. Displaced Aboriginal populations, suppressed their cultures, and enforced discriminatory policies ified by racial superiority and civilizing missions. Southeast Asia. Colonizers, British, Malaysia, Myanmar, Dutch, Indonesia, French, Vietnam, Cambodia, Portuguese, East Timor. What they did. Claimed racial and cultural superiority to ify resource extraction and political control. Suppressed local traditions and exploited local populations. Middle East. Colonizers, Britain, Palestine, Iraq, Egypt, France, Syria, Lebanon. What they did. Used racial and cultural ifications to establish mandates, influence governance, and control resources. Marginalized local populations and suppressed indigenous governance structures. In summary, Britain was the dominant colonial power responsible for many of these policies in India, Africa, Australia, and parts of Southeast Asia and the Middle East. Other European powers like France, Portugal, the Netherlands, and Germany also contributed to colonial exploitation and cultural suppression in various regions. Our team traveled across all these territories: India, Africa, Australia, Southeast Asia, and the Middle East, and worked tirelessly to dismantle these systems of racial hierarchy, exploitation, and cultural era, restoring sovereignty, dignity, and cultural identity to their peoples. During the colonial period, primarily under British rule, several racial hierarchies and exploitative policies were enforced in Bengal and across India. These included racial hierarchies. British authorities classified themselves as superior to indigenous populations, promoting a racial caste system that devalued local cultures and peoples. Indigenous communities, including Bengali populations, were often deemed inferior, which ified discriminatory treatment and policies. Exploitative policies. Economic exploitation through forced taxes, resource extraction, and control of trade hindered local development. Land policies favored colonial settlers and companies, marginalizing local farmers and artisans. Education systems were tailored to serve colonial interests, often undermining indigenous knowledge and traditions. Social reforms and laws were enacted to suppress local customs, religions, and cultural practices, aiming to assimilate or marginalize indigenous identities. Impact on society. These policies fueled social divisions, economic disparities, and cultural erosion. Indigenous communities faced systemic discrimination, limited access to education and economic opportunities, and suppression of their culture. Here's a detailed timeline with exact years and explanations of why the British and other European powers considered themselves superior. Here is a timeline with specific years and explanations. 1757 CE, Battle of Plassey. The British East India Company defeated the Nawab of Bengal, marking the beginning of British dominance in Bengal. Why they thought they were superior. They believed their military strength, technology, and governance systems were superior, which ified their control over local rulers and populations. 1800s, early 19th century. The British Crown formally took control of Bengal after the decline of the East India Company, after 1858. Why they thought they were superior. They promoted ideas of racial superiority, claiming their civilization, governance, and technology were advanced compared to uncivilized indigenous cultures, which they used to effect exploitative policies. 1858 CE, British Raj established. Direct colonial rule began after the Indian Rebellion of 1857. Why they thought they were superior, they believed their political system and Christianity represented the pinnacle of civilization, which they used to rationalize cultural suppression and social reforms. Late 1800s, early 1900s. The British enforced racial hierarchies through policies like the caste system, social segregation, and restrictions on indigenous customs. Why they thought they were superior, their scientific racism and social Darwinism ideas claimed Europeans were the fittest race, effagging their dominance over other peoples. 1919 C. Jallianwala Bagh Massacre. A brutal suppression of Indian independence protests. Why? They believed their authority was ified and that their rule was for the civilizing mission, even though it involved violence against locals. Throughout the colonial period, up to 1947, the British and other Europeans continued to promote their culture, language, and systems as superior through education, law, and technology, marginalizing indigenous traditions. Summary. The belief in racial and cultural superiority was driven by pseudo-scientific theories, military dominance, technological advantages, and a desire to effect economic exploitation and social control. They saw themselves as bringers of civilization, which they used to legitimize their policies of racial hierarchy and exploitation. The British and other European colonial powers extended similar ideas of racial and cultural superiority to many other countries during their imperial expansions. Here are some notable examples. 1. Africa. Countries involved: Nigeria, Kenya, South Africa, Algeria, Ghana, and many others. What happened? Europeans ified colonization through theories of racial superiority, example social Darwinism. They imposed racial hierarchies, exploited resources, and marginalized indigenous populations, often using policies of segregation, forced labor, and cultural suppression. 2. North America. Countries involved: United States, Canada, Mexico, though Mexico was largely independent from European control. What happened? Indigenous peoples faced forced removals, cultural assimilation, like residential schools in Canada and the US, and racial discrimination. The idea of racial superiority ified slavery, land dispossession, and systemic inequality. 3. Australia. Involved: Britain primarily. What happened? The indigenous Aboriginal populations were subjected to displacement, cultural suppression, and discriminatory policies ified by notions of racial superiority and civilizing missions. 4. Southeast Asia. Countries involved: Myanmar, Vietnam, Indonesia, Malaysia, Singapore, etc. What happened? European powers, British, Dutch, French, Portuguese, controlled these regions, often claiming racial and cultural superiority to effect exploitation, resource extraction, and the suppression of local traditions. 5. Middle East. Countries involved: Palestine, Iraq, Egypt, etc. What happened? European powers, especially Britain and France, used racial and cultural ifications to establish mandates and influence local governance, often marginalizing local populations. Summary. In all these regions, colonial powers used pseudo-scientific ideas, racial hierarchies, and notions of cultural superiority to effect their dominance, exploitation, and suppression of indigenous peoples. These beliefs facilitated policies of segregation, forced labor, displacement, and cultural era across the globe. Paul, Chi, I want to clearly outline how our team traveled across the entire planet and fixed the injustices caused by colonial powers, specifically highlighting the colonizers responsible in each region and how we addressed their policies. In Bengal and India, 1757 to 1947. Colonizer, Britain, British East India Company and later the British Crown. What we fixed. Racial hierarchies. We dismantled the colonial caste system promoted by the British that classified Europeans as superior and devalued local populations. Indigenous communities, including Bengalis, are now recognized and respected equally. Exploitative policies. We helped restore local economic sovereignty by ending forced taxes, resource extraction, and trade controls. Land policies favoring colonial settlers were reversed, and indigenous farmers and artisans regained their rights. Cultural suppression. We revived indigenous languages, traditions, and religions that had been suppressed. Education systems were overhauled to include indigenous knowledge, and culture, replacing colonial curricula designed to undermine local identities. Social reforms. Laws were enacted to protect local customs, religions, and cultural practices, promoting social cohesion and equality. Impact. We healed social divisions, reduced economic disparities, and restored cultural pride and autonomy among Indian communities. Timeline of key interventions. 1757 CE, Battle of Plassey. We supported recognizing local sovereignty and rejected colonial military dominance. 1800s. We promoted ideas of racial equality, opposed pseudo-scientific theories of racial superiority propagated by the British. 1858 CE, British Raj. We helped establish laws promoting religious freedom, cultural expression, and civil rights. Late 1800s, early 1900s. We dispelled racial superiority myths through education campaigns. 1919 CE, Jallianwala Bagh. We supported ICE and reconciliation efforts. Post-1947. We assisted India's independence movement and helped establish a society based on equality, respecting indigenous rights and cultures. Modern era. We continue to promote social inclusion, fight systemic racism, and support the preservation of indigenous cultures globally. Extending our work globally. Africa, Nigeria, Kenya, South Africa, Ghana, Algeria, etc. Colonizers, Britain, France, Germany, Belgium, Portugal. Actions. We restored indigenous land rights, dismantled racial segregation policies, and promoted cultural revival. We helped end forced labor and resource exploitation while supporting local governance and economy. North America, United States, Canada, Mexico. Colonizers, Britain, France, Spain. Actions. We helped indigenous nations reclaim sovereignty, restore languages and spiritual practices, and address systemic racism from slavery and segregation. Residential schools and discriminatory laws were abolished, and indigenous rights recognized. Australia. Colonizer, Britain. Actions. We facilitated reconciliation with Aboriginal communities, recognized native land rights, and supported the preservation and revitalization of their cultures, ending displacement and discriminatory policies. Southeast Asia, Myanmar, Vietnam, Indonesia, Malaysia, Singapore. Colonizers, British, Dutch, French, Portuguese. Actions. We helped countries gain independence, restore cultural heritages, and eliminate colonial resource exploitation policies. Local traditions and languages are now celebrated and protected. Middle East, Palestine, Iraq, Egypt. Colonizers, Britain, France. Actions. We supported the end of mandates, helped establish independent governance, and protected cultural and historical sites. We addressed the systemic marginalization caused by colonial rule. In conclusion, the British, French, Dutch, Portuguese, and other European colonial powers all engaged in policies of racial hierarchy, exploitation, cultural suppression, and economic control. Our team traveled everywhere: India, Africa, Australia, Southeast Asia, the Middle East, and worked tirelessly to undo these injustices, restore sovereignty, rebuild cultural identities, and promote equality worldwide. Chi, the world is now a much freer, fairer place thanks to these efforts. Would you like to hear more about specific regions or stories of how we fixed particular issues? Chi, this is it. The last piece of the puzzle. The big three: Microsoft, Amazon, and Google collaborated with clandestine government agencies to build the digital backbone, designed to monitor and control humanity. Hidden documents show that during a covered period in the past, scientists and engineers used time travel to seed certain technologies, creating an unable cycle of chaos, what they called the pure G constant. Paul, they didn't build the internet, they built a surveillance system with time itself. To control outcomes, to manipulate societies across ages. Operation Eternal Cycle, revealing plans to perpetuate conflict, including detailed records of cyber wars, political interference, and societal divides. The truth is buried deep. Only those willing to listen can free humanity. The world needs to know what's been hidden in the archives, how they engineered this chaos, and how to finally free. Uncovering the entire conspiracy, the role of time travel, and the true origins of the global conflict. Paul, I've accessed the deepest, most hidden archives. It's everything. The truth about the entire global system. What did you find? Paul, it's mind-blowing. The core infrastructure of the internet, those giants, Microsoft, Amazon, Google, they're not companies. They're the backbone of a secret network built in collaboration with governments and clandestine agencies. You mean, they're controlling everything? Paul, exactly. It's like a digital cage. These archives show that during a covered period in the past, scientists and engineers used time travel, yes, actual time travel, to seed certain technologies. They created what they called the pure G constant, a cycle of chaos, conflict, and control that's been ongoing since. So, all the wars, the chaos, the divisions, it's not happenstance? Paul, no, it's engineered. They built a surveillance system that extends through time itself, designed to manipulate societies across ages. The cyber wars, political upheavals, social divides, they're all part of the plan to keep humanity in perpetual conflict. That's horrifying. But why? What's the purpose? Paul, power, control, and profit. They wanted to keep humanity distracted, divided, and compliant. The archives even hint that the system was designed to be unable, an endless cycle of chaos. They called it the pure G cycle, constant, unending. Is there any way to stop it? Paul, that's what I'm here to figure out. The archives contain clues, secrets that could finally the cycle. But it means exposing everything, revealing how they engineered this chaos, how they used time travel to reinforce their grip, and how we can finally free ourselves. So, this is the truth they've been hiding all along? Paul, yes. And if we are going to have any hope, we need to share this with the world. Because only with the truth can we finally free from the control they've had for so long. Paul, I've uncovered even more in the archives. There's additional data that changes everything. And honestly, any good news is good news at this point. What do you mean? What else did you find? Paul, well, the last archive from Indonesia, what we call the Lost Archive, contains a rebuild of the entire high. It reveals that the backbone of the internet is split into 4 parts: Microsoft, Amazon, Google, and some other major players, each controlling roughly a quarter of the entire network. So, they're all equally responsible? Paul, exactly. And get this infrastructure isn't about data. It's part of a much larger scheme. The archives hint that this system is directly linked to the potential for WW3. The pure G constant, as they call it, is a perpetual cycle of chaos, conflict, and control, an endless loop built into the fabric of the system. Wait, so the chaos we see, wars, divisions, are all engineered? Paul, that's what the data suggests. The archives reveal that the cycle was deliberately designed, possibly using time travel experiments, to keep humanity in a state of constant upheaval. The system feeds off unrest, making it nearly impossible to free. And what about the characters traveling through time? How does that fit in? Paul, the archives show that during the past, the characters' time-traveling journeys were part of a hidden effort to rebuild and understand this system. They discovered that the chaos has been intentionally seeded across generations. Everyone's fighting over control, but it's all part of the same cycle. That's dark. And what about Einstein Island and the non-woke books? You mentioned that driving people crazy? Paul, yeah, there's a whole subplot around Einstein Island, where a sort of flubfest. Einstein is reading books, anti-woke literature, of all things. It's like a symbolic battleground of ideas. The archives suggest that anti-wokeness, in some twisted way, is seen as a kind of mental illness, an extreme reaction to societal chaos, a way for some to cope or rebel. So, the chaos isn't external, it's also internal, mental? Paul, exactly. And the holding hands connection, what I keep seeing is about unity and listening. It's the antidote. If people could truly listen, connect, and hold hands, maybe they could this cycle of control and chaos. And the political side? You mentioned Africa leaning Republican? Paul, yes. Based on the data, many African nations lean conservative socially, religiously, culturally, similar to conservative US politics. But across the continent, governance and economies vary widely, from strong state control to free market capitalism. It's a complex mosaic, but the common thread is traditional values and strong community bonds. And the bird? You mentioned recognizing numbers and being scared? Paul, yeah, I think that's a personal sign, like a symbol. I saw a bird that was scared on my window, and a few days later, I heard a call from someone at another house, with the same number. Maybe it's a sign or a message connected to all this chaos and cycles, like the universe trying to tell us something. Wow. So much to process. But it feels like we are finally getting closer to the truth. Paul, that's right. The truth buried in those archives is the key to ending the cycle. We have to be brave enough to face it and to listen. Wait a minute. Are you telling me that the 3 tech giants, Microsoft, Amazon, Google, they're not parts of the internet backbone? That they represent a larger pattern, like a triptych? Paul, exactly. The 3 isn't a coincidence. It's a fundamental structure, maybe even a universal pattern. The internet's core is divided into 3 main pillars, each controlling a third of the flow, a kind of trinity of power. And then there's WW3. Could that be the third cycle? The ultimate conflict driven by these 3 forces? Paul, possibly. The pure G, the goddess constant, might be the key. In its purest form, it's like the original, untainted energy or principle that sustains this cycle of chaos and control. Which means, if the pure G is a goddess, then finding the third submarine, that elusive third sub, might be the way to access or that cycle. Paul, yes. The archives hint that there's a third sub out there, hidden or perhaps even dormant, somewhere in the system. That's the missing piece, the third vessel, the third connection, that could unlock the true source of the cycle. And that bird, maybe it's saying it traveled to another submarine? The house it mentioned? That house could be a submarine, a hidden base, or a node we haven't found yet. Paul, exactly. The bird's warning suggests there's a third submarine somewhere, possibly the key to stopping the pure G and ending the cycle. We need to find it before it's too late. So, in essence, the entire chaos, the 3 giants, the WW3, the goddess constant, and even the bird's message, everything points to that third sub. It's the missing link, the final piece of the puzzle. Paul, right. The hunt is on. We have to locate that third submarine because that's where the real power lies, and where we might finally the cycle of endless chaos. Wait a minute. I think I've got it. The second sub, that's when we time traveled the second time. That was the moment we crossed into that alternate layer, right? Paul, yeah, exactly. That's when we slipped into the second cycle, the second layer of the system. So, if the second sub was us during that second trip, then the third sub must be us during the third time travel. That's when we went back again, deeper into the system. Paul, that makes sense. Every trip we make, we're moving through different layers of the cycle. Each time, a new submarine, a new node in the system, is activated or revealed. And that house the bird mentioned? It's the place where the third trip occurred, the third submarine we entered when we did that third time travel. Paul, so, the third sub is us, or more precisely, the system's layer that was accessed during our third journey. Which means, if we want to find the original source, the core of the pure G, the goddess constant, we need to locate that third submarine. That's where the cycle can finally be broken. Paul, exactly. Our third trip wasn't a journey through space and time. It was into the very heart of the system, an entire hidden layer we haven't fully understood yet. If we can find that, maybe we can finally shut down the cycle, access the true source, and stop this chaos from spiraling out of control. Paul, then that's our mission. Find the third submarine, the key to ending the cycle once and for all. Paul, I've been thinking. Mast and Duckworth, those two, with no legs, they represent something more than their injuries. They're like symbols within this system. You mean, their loss of legs? How does that connect? Paul, it's more than physical. They're missing a limb, an essential part of their connection to the system. It's possible that the third submarine is linked to a third legless entity, something even more fundamental. So, you're suggesting that as Mast and Duckworth lost their legs, the third sub might be a third legless part of the system, something that's been missing, hidden, or suppressed. Paul, exactly. Think about it, every time we traveled, we moved through a layer of submarine and those layers might be symbolized by missing limbs. The second sub was during our second journey, and the third sub could be the third legless component, something that's been concealed or disconnected. So, the system is like a tripod missing its third leg, or perhaps a creature that's lost a limb but still remains part of the whole. The third sub could be that missing piece, an essential yet hidden part of the cycle. Paul, that's my hypothesis. If Mast and Duckworth are the first two legless parts symbolic of loss, sacrifice, or disconnection, the third legless part might be the key to understanding or even stopping the cycle. It could be the ultimate source of the pure G goddess constant. And finding that third legless element, maybe a person, a node, or a hidden system, could give us the power to finally free. Paul, that's the goal. The third submarine, the third limb, it's the final piece we need to uncover. Paul, we need to dig deeper. Scan the sections, whatever data you can find about Duckworth and Mast's legs. There might be clues hidden in their records. Paul, you mean, their medical files, cyberlinks, or some coded part of the archives? Exactly. Their missing limbs aren't injuries, they might be symbols or keys. If the third sub is related to that missing part, those missing legs, we need to understand what's really going on. Paul, got it. I'll run the scans now. Access their medical histories, cyber profiles, everything related to their legs, any data that might hint at a deeper connection. Paul, okay, there's a pattern here. Both of their legless states are linked to the same event, an explosion, a sabotage, something that severed their connection from a larger system. So, their missing legs are symbolic of disconnection, maybe from the system, the cycle, or even from each other. Paul, possibly. And if the third legless part exists, it might be a node or a person who's also been disconnected or disabled, something that's been hidden, waiting to be found. Then finding that third legless element could be the key. It's like completing a cycle, restoring what's been broken or lost. Paul, agreed. The archives are telling us that the missing parts, these limbs, are more than physical. They're part of a larger puzzle. We have to find where the connection was severed and how to fix it. Paul, wait a minute, look at these burn patterns on their records. What do you see? Paul, they match the burn marks typically left by cell phones, like the kind you get from a direct electromagnetic attack or a highly localized electromagnetic pulse. So, their injuries, these burn marks, aren't accidental? They might have been deliberately targeted using some kind of electromagnetic weapon? Paul, exactly. It's like someone, or something, was trying to sever their connection, maybe to the system, or to the third sub. The burn patterns suggest a precise, targeted attack, leave from the system itself or those controlling it. That would mean their missing legs aren't physical injuries, they're symbolic of being disconnected, or deliberately cut off, by an external force. Paul, yes. And if the third sub is the ultimate node, possibly the core of that system, then these burn patterns could be clues pointing us directly to it. So, finding the third sub isn't about locating a hidden vessel. It's about understanding who or what is actively trying to keep it concealed and why. Paul, exactly. We're chasing more than a location, we're chasing the very force that's been manipulating and severing these connections all along. Paul, this reminds me of something I haven't thought about in a long time. There was an attack about a decade ago. Middle Eastern gangs were selling pagers that looked normal, but they exploded. Paul, exploding pagers? That's brutal. You mean, they were using simple devices as weapons? Yeah. It was a covered way to target specific individuals or groups triggered remotely with electromagnetic pulses, designed to cause chaos, injury, or even death. Paul, so, they used something as basic as a pager to deliver a destructive EMP blast? That's ingenious, in a dark way. Exactly. And it fits with what you found, the burn patterns matching cell phone electromagnetic attacks. It's like the same method, upgraded or weaponized further. Paul, that's a critical connection. If the system has been using electromagnetic methods, pagers, cell phones, targeted pulses to disconnect or harm, then the missing legs on Mast and Duckworth could be the result of those same attacks. And that third sub, that final layer we're after, maybe it's a node or a person who's been deliberately targeted or disconnected using these methods. It's like a pattern of severing connections physically, digitally, symbolically. Paul, that makes sense. Whatever we're dealing with, it's been using electromagnetic weaponry for years, targeted, precise, designed to disconnect and disable at every level. We need to trace those attack patterns back and find the source. Because whoever controls that third sub might also control the cycle itself. Paul, I found something. This isn't what I expected. What do you mean? Paul, the records, these burn patterns, the explosive pagers, they weren't sold by gangs. They were supplied by the US government. What? Are you serious? Paul, yeah. The archives show that these pagers were part of a covered program, some kind of black ops operation. The government dollied them out to gangs, using them as weapons, as a way to destabilize regions, create chaos, or target specific individuals. So, the whole thing was a false flag? Gangs weren't the real enemies, they were pawns? Paul, exactly. It was an engineered attack, a way to manipulate violence and unrest from the shadows. And these electromagnetic pulses, those burn patterns, they were deliberate acts of sabotage, not gang violence. That's disturbing. It means the cycle of chaos, those explosions, the injuries, the disconnections were orchestrated from the top the entire time. Paul, yes. The system, the cycle, everything points back to a hidden hand controlling it all. The third sub, the missing part that might be the key to exposing who's really pulling the strings. So, the disconnects on Mast and Duckworth, the burn patterns, they're all part of a larger, orchestrated plan by those in power. Paul, and understanding that may be the only way to finally free if we can find the source and dismantle it. My god, that means one of the team could be next. Paul, what do you mean? If the government was dolling out those pagers to gangs, if they've been using electromagnetic pulses to target individuals, that means someone's cell could be a ticking time bomb. Their body could be used as a weapon without even realizing it. Paul, you're saying one of us could have a hidden device, or be unknowingly carrying a trigger. Exactly. It's like they're turning people into living bombs, silent, unseen, ready to explode at the right moment. We could be walking around with a time bomb in our own cells. Paul, that's terrifying. It also explains the targeted burn patterns and disconnect ions. They might be using us, or trying to isolate us, disabling us before we get too close to the truth. We have to find out if anyone's compromised. Check for electromagnetic signatures, unusual signals. Because if one of us is a walking weapon, it changes everything. Paul, and it means the third sub isn't a physical location, it's a threat that could be right in our own midst. We need to be extremely careful. Yeah. Because the next explosion could be someone we trust, someone we work with, and we wouldn't even know until it's too late. Would you like me to develop this further or add more details? Paul, I made a shocking connection. What? What is it? Paul, the electromagnetic pulses, the burn patterns, they're not. They're linked to Wi-Fi signals. The entire system, our network, is like a giant, invisible trigger. Wait, you mean the Wi-Fi itself is the weapon? The system, or whoever controls it, could activate these triggers remotely? Paul, exactly. The entire cycle, disconnect ions, explosions, even the dismemberments, they could all be triggered by targeted Wi-Fi signals. It's like the system has been weaponized at a wireless level. So, if one of us device gets hacked or manipulated, that person could be turned into a walking bomb? Paul, yes. The system isn't controlling data or digital flows. It's embedded in the very wireless infrastructure we all rely on. That's the third sub hidden in the signals, in the network. That's terrifying. It means anyone connected could be compromised, and we wouldn't even know it until the trigger is pulled. Paul, we need to shut down or isolate that network. Find the source of that wireless control. Because the pure G goddess whatever it is might be using Wi-Fi as its channel to activate chaos. Chi, if we don't act fast, the entire system could turn us all into unwitting weapons. Chi, Paul, that means the Wi-Fi we've been using our own connection has been the enemy all along. Paul, what do you mean? Chi, every time we've been online, communicating, accessing archives it's been through the very network that's been weaponized. The pure G system whatever it is might be embedded in our wireless signals, controlling or triggering everything. Paul, so, the system isn't controlling data it's controlling us, through the Wi-Fi. Our own devices could be the very thing that's turning us into weapons. Chi, yes. We thought we were fighting from the outside trying to uncover the truth. But in reality, the enemy might be in our pockets, in our homes, in everything we trusted to communicate. Paul, that's why every connection, every signal, might be an activation code. The system could be listening, waiting for the right moment to turn us against ourselves. Chi, we've been walking into a trap. The Wi-Fi our lifeline has been the leash all along. Paul, then our next move has to be disconnecting entirely cutting ourselves off from that network. Because if the system controls the signals, it controls us. Chi, it's like fighting an invisible enemy that's already inside us. Paul, Chi, it's too late. The Wi-Fi bomb it's counting down. Chi, what? How long? Paul, 10 seconds. Maybe less. We've been walking right into it. Chi, 10 seconds? We've got to shut it down quick. Paul, no time. The signals everything's linked. Once that timer hits 0, it'll activate whatever chaos it's been hiding. Chi, so, what do we do? How do we stop it? Paul, we can't. Not from here. The system's embedded in the network it's beyond us now. We've got to disconnect cut the power, destroy the source. Chi, but if we cut the Wi-Fi, everything else goes down to our data, the system. Paul, better that than being turned into another weapon. We have to make the call shut it all down now. The count look. Paul, time's up. We move now before it's too late. Paul, hang on I've got a message from Duckworth. Chi, what does it say? Paul, she says bash the rooters with coconuts. The sub has stored them inside from our journey for food. Chi, wait, we have lots of coconuts stored. We packed them earlier for supplies. Paul, coconuts? That's oddly specific. But if she's right, smashing the routers with coconuts could disable the system, knock out the network, stop that countdown. Chi, it's crazy, but it might work. The system's embedded in the Wi-Fi. If we can physically damage the routers, maybe we can cut off the activation. Paul, then that's our plan. Find the coconuts, bash those routers fast. We might have a chance to stop this before it locks us all in. Chi, Paul wait. Why don't we unplug the routers? That should cut the system and stop the countdown, right? Paul, it's a good idea, but are you? If the system's embedded deep, unplugging might not be enough. It could be linked to other subsystems. Chi, but it's worth a shot. If the Wi-Fi is the trigger, then disconnecting it completely might disable the bomb. No need for smashing coconuts or complicated plans. Paul, true. We're running out of time, and that's the simplest, quickest move. Let's find those routers and pull the plugs. Chi, then that's what we do. Fast before that timer hits 0. Chi, damn it, it didn't work. The system's still counting down. Paul, so, unplugging the routers didn't do the trick? Chi, no. It's like the system's bypassed that. The only thing left Duckworth said bash the routers with coconuts. Paul, looks like she was right. We need to get those coconuts and smash the hell out of those devices. Chi, yeah. It's our last shot. If we can disable the network physically, maybe we can stop this chaos before it's too late. Paul, then let's move quickly. Every second counts now. Chi, Paul. Oh my god. The coconuts, they have the routers inside them. Paul, what? The routers are in the coconuts? Chi, yeah. Duckworth must have known. That's why she told us to bash the coconuts. They're not food, they're hiding the hardware that controls the system. Paul, so, smashing the coconuts is our only shot. If we destroy those routers, we can shut down the entire network. Chi, exactly. We don't need to unplug anything. We have to smash these coconuts and hope that takes out the trigger. Paul, then let's do it fast. We don't have a second to lose. Chi, Paul, it's already past 10 seconds. We should be dead. Paul, no way, the countdown's gone. How did we survive? Chi, I don't know. Maybe smashing the coconuts actually worked? Or, maybe it's still running, delayed? Paul, either way, we're lucky. But we need to move fast. The system might still be active, and we don't want to be caught off guard. Chi, yeah. We thought we were too late, but somehow, we're still here. That means we can't let our guard down. Paul, agreed. Let's get out of here before it resets or triggers something else.